Iawn. Bore da pawb, nag o'r cyfarfod, hoffwn i croesawu pawb yma, bore yma i Llandrindod, a hefyd croeso i pawb sy'n efo ni adre. In opening this planning, taxi licensing and rights of way committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone in Llandrindod and also at home, to officers, councillors and to members of the public. So we'll push on item un ar agenda bore yma. Apologies and roll call, please, Carol.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Gareth D. Jones.
Yma.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Tom Colbert isn't present at the moment. No. Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Claire Hall.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Ed Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Councillor Karina Kenyon Wade. Councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Jeff Morgan. Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan.
Yma.
Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson.
Present.
Councillor Hugh Williams.
Yma.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, diolch yn fawr, Carol. Moving on, item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. To authorise the chair to sign the minutes of the previous meeting of the committee held on the 30th of January 2025 as a true and accurate record. These are on page 5 to 14 of our pack. So I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Thank you, Councillor Ed. Item 3, declarations of interest. A, to receive any declarations of interest from members relating to items to be considered on the agenda. No. To receive members' requests that a record be made of their membership of a town or community councils where discussion has taken place of matters for the consideration of this committee. No, thank you. To receive declarations from members of the committee that they will be acting as a local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. And D, to note the details of the member of the county council who are not members of this committee who will be acting as a local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. Councillor Les, I think this is where you say hello. You're acting on behalf of your community?
I am, yeah.
So under which item on the agenda, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, good. Someone moving forward, straight on. Updates. Carol, has there been an update pack sent out? Has everyone had the opportunity to read that, please? Yeah, I take it by everyone nodding that they have. So we're moving swiftly on to the first application before us this morning. Application 4.2, which is 24/1784/FUL land at Pen y Borfa, Caerhus. So we're going to hear just from members of the public who are joining us here today. We're going to hear from the officer who's going to give her presentation. He will take us through to her recommendation, and then there will be public speakers, of which I believe there are a few. As this is a major application, they will each be entitled to 8 minutes, and the final speakers will have a combined total of that, which will be 16 minutes as we understand it. So that's for your information, so you know how the procedure will work this morning. So the officer taking us through this is Lorraine. So Lorraine, the floor is all yours. Diolch, thank you.
Thank you. Oops. So this is a site for 29 dwellings and associated works on the west of Caerhus. It's been called in by the local member, and also there is a holding direction on the application by the Welsh Government, which means that we can refuse it today if you wish to do that. But if your recommendation is to approve it, it would then go to them for consideration, and they can either require it to come back to us for determination or choose to deal with it themselves. So this is the site. You can see outlined in red here. This is the village of Kyasu. So the cross there is the centre of the village, and it's on the A470 trunk road heading up towards Carno. These are a number of sort of ribbon development houses here and a couple more here, so it's sort of tucked in between those. And you can see it on a wider scale there. The site is within the LDP housing boundary, and also has a housing allocation on it. And just as a bit of background, there was an outline consent on it for 41 houses, but details changed, information changed, and some of those houses were then deemed to be in the flood zone. So the applicant has gone for a new full application for the 29 dwellings and the slightly smaller development area. The whole site is 1.6 hectares. You can see it's a flat field with the trunk road to the south, and ditches to the rear here, and also the Manthrig Brook comes through from the north and goes off towards Kyasus to the east. This is the location plan. You can see that there are dwellings either side. This one here is a bungalow, probably 1960s, 1970s bungalow, and then there is an older property here. There's two properties with their rear gardens facing the site. This is the LDP housing allocation on this general site here, and also the development boundary you can see in the black line. We've got a constraints map of the local constraints. You can see the public rights of way network, which is the black dotted lines there, public footpaths. And also we've got the Kyasus Roman site, which is a scheduled monument, which are these blue hatched sites. This is the flood map for planning information, which is the most up-to-date information there is about flooding issues, and you can see the site there. The dark blue is the rivers flooding, and we've got these pink and purple areas, which are the small water floods areas. And you can see on this closer site, excuse my wobbly line, the area of the flood line that comes across the field. With regard to the flooding issues, land drainage, Powys County Council land drainage had no comment at the time, and there was no objection from NRW. Obviously, if this application were to be approved, it would have to go to the SAB team for sustainable drainage approval, which is, of course, a second part of the process to make sure that it is acceptable within the flooding issues. This next slide is the site layout plan. As you can see, the housing itself follows the flood line, which is this blue one here. We've got a strong frontage along the A470 in these front houses. We've got public highways here, and private drives would be on these slightly different coloured areas here. We've got attenuation features here. And I've got some photos now of the site. I'm standing in the gateway, which is at the west of the site. This is facing towards Kyasus. and this is turning around and facing the other way towards Carno. I'm now standing in the corner, the southwestern corner, looking towards the village. This is the bungalow I mentioned earlier, and then the older properties further down. And then I'm looking the other way up towards the Carno. There is a sort of a green lane there which separates these two semi-detached dwellings, that their rear elevation is facing us. So there is this band of trees here, but also a slight separation due to this green lane. I'm now looking, this house is across the road at the village side of the site, and this is the hedgerow at the front there. This is to the rear, there's that bungalow again. This is the rear of the site, and the Manthrig Brook comes down sort of there and cuts the northeast corner and then heads out towards the village there. There are 3 affordable homes within this site. So because of the position of Caersws, there's got to be a 10% need for affordable homes, and this is the 3 in the centre of the site. And now I'm just going to show there are a number of housing styles. 3-bed detached, another 3-bed detached, and another again, and again, and again. And this is a 4-bed detached, 3-bed semi-detached, bit more interest of a 3, well, these are 4-bed detached, but with a room in the roof, just to add a bit of interest to the site. 3-bed semi-detached, and the 3-bed terrace of affordable dwellings at the end there. So the theme is very much the red brick, and this, the intention was that's a strong colour within Caersws, the older properties. So that's the end of my presentation, and the recommendation is for approval. I'll go back to the main site plan. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much, Lorraine. Right, we have 4 speakers, I believe. First of which I'd like to invite Councillor Les. You'd be so kind as to come up here and take your place, and you, Councillor Les, have 8 minutes in which to address the committee. 5 speakers, my apologies.
May I stand up?
If you could sit down, apologies, so that people at home can see you.
I have to.
Oh. I'm not gonna make you sit down if it's up to you. People would love to see you smiling.
Aye.
And your mic, please, Councillor Les, when you're ready. Time's yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, officers and members of the committee. My name is Councillor Les George, and I have served on Caersws Community Council for over 30 years. Have been a Powys County Councillor for 8 years. Was born and brought up in this actual basin, flood basin catchment area. I am 100% supporting my constituents. I have experienced and can see at first hand the forever escalating flood problems Caiasus village is experiencing several times a year. All the flood waters from the Manthrig Wurns catchment basin overflows and cuts off the main street to the doctor's surgery, bursts open the manhole covers, sending raw sewage into this impassable road. Powys County Council Planning Department, over recent years, have approved many uncontested development applications, ranging from four large poultry sheds, 3 housing estates, holiday accommodation, private builds, leisure projects, and so it goes on. This uncontrolled continuation of developments in the Caiasus floodplain catchment area has an accumulating effect, causing excessive runoff and creating these flooding conditions. Members, this individual approval system cannot be allowed to carry on. Caiasus village residents recently applauded Powys Planning Department for working closely with Barcud Housing Association for the welcomed development of 22 brand new family homes. We are not against, but would welcome more development in the correct place. This new construction project in our village will be built in the elevated area of the village, where private houses and council estates have always enjoyed flood-free conditions, and it is where our top-rated primary school is situated. There is ample room for more housing development in this ideal area. So it is beyond me to know why Powys Planning Department are recommended approval of new 29-unit inappropriate housing estate in a floodplain field outside of the village boundary, next to the main A470 trunk road, and is just not in keeping with the existing road and street scene, which is again a contravention. Over the years, and I mean over the years, this Pembover application in a greenfield site has failed to come to fruition because of its very unpopular and contentious nature. Members of the committee, I was going to take notice of the TAN 15 regulation, which I believe new regulations are supposed to be coming out, but this will be covered a bit later on with the other speakers. Members of the committee, please listen carefully to Mr. David Evans. Mr. David Evans, civil engineer, a local resident civil engineer, extremely detailed report. And Mrs. Laura Thomas's informative and constructive viewpoint that is endorsed by the whole community. We are also very well supported by Caersws residents today. Members, it would be remiss of me not to be supporting my constituents in their hour of need. Can I sincerely request that you reject the officer's recommendation to approve this application and vote for a refusal? Thank you, members, for your time.
Thank you very much, councillor Les.
Thank you, Chair.
I would now ask Laura Thomas, please, to come up and address the committee. Of course.
This is still on now, isn't it? Yeah.
So, Thomas, you have 8 minutes, and also Mr. Evans, you also have 8 minutes. Mr. Evans, when it's your turn to speak, if you'd be so kind as to swap seats so that we can work off that.
Okay,
red
thank you.
light. So time's yours whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Laura Thomas. I was born and raised in Caersws, and I have lived there all my life. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Caersws Residents Group, and I hope you have received a copy of the report via your email. On this report, it's showing a video and pictures of how the situation really is here. The application for this small parcel of boggy greenfield was placed on the UDP over 20 years ago, and it has been removed and resubmitted at least twice since then, somehow finding its way onto the LDP. There have been many concerns raised over this development, especially considering the increase in global warming and climate change, of which there is no mention in the Powys County Council Officer's report. So why does this council ignore central government's advice on climate change and the catastrophic effect this has on developments built in a floodplain? Street scene. Caersws Community Council all agree that the frontage of this development is not in keeping with the other 13 properties along Carno Road. Existing properties have individual entrances. They have large areas, front and back of their houses and bungalows. Therefore, this does not comply with the street scene policy. It resembles urban sprawl. Parking. The agent states that the reduced number of parking spaces on the site is acceptable due to the provision of a bus stop and, in the proximity, the train station. Plans have been changed to make it fit, but in accordance with the CSS Wales parking standards, i.e. there should be 1 visitor parking space per every 5 houses, it does not fit. All he wants to do is increase the housing density and cram them in. The Highways Authority note that the applicant has not submitted a sustainability assessment and further note that the site would not qualify for a reduction in parking spaces as it is not within suitable walking distance of local facilities such as the school, the doctor's surgery, the bus station and the train stations, and the frequency of the actual bus transport is very insufficient. Therefore, cars would be parked half on the road, half on the pavement, and possibly on the A470. We all know what a contentious issue parking is between neighbours. If it's not done correctly, we further note that there is no mention of disability parking. Bus stops. Caersws Community Council and we residents state that the proposed bus stops are not in a safe place. Passengers will access and exit the buses on the main A470 trunk road, which means people crossing the road in a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, seriously dangerous. There is no information as to sighting of streetlights. Will there be bus shelters built to protect the passengers? And now there is a mention of a tactile surface for crossing the road. Really? The A470 is a fast and dangerous stretch of road, and as there will be no provision for school buses, the children will have to walk nearly a mile along the narrow 1.5 metre uneven footpath to catch their bus, or go to school in the village and then walk home again in the evening and in the day, and then sometimes when it's dark. Active travel. There is a requirement for a 2-metre wide footpath to be built, in front of the development. That should tie in with the existing footpath leading to the village. This would mean encroaching on a third party's property. The planning officer's report stated that both parties had met to resolve the matter. The owners of this ransom piece of land have asked me to assure you that no discussions have taken place and no resolution has been reached or is ever likely to be reached. Who is responsible for this misinformation? No footpath, no development. Highways. There are many damning reports placed on the portal that are not shown in the officer's report. Why is this? 20 crucial points were raised relating to the width and lengths of driveways, garages, parking spaces and more. The lack of turning circles and visibility around the estate. This would mean there'd be no refuse collection on the site, resulting in a roadside collection point having to be built. That's 29 black bins and 116 recycling boxes. Also noted a lack of footpath and cycling routes. We are still awaiting a response from the agent. Something has been placed on the portal, but we've been unable to access it. Mid Wales and West Fire Service and Rescue Authority have also raised concerns that the developer has not provided evidence on adequate water supplies and vehicular access in case of emergencies. There have been no revised drawings submitted and therefore will not be approved by Highways or Welsh Government. Committee considerations. According to the Welsh Government, there are many considerations that need to be addressed before a development can be approved. We have taken only a few of these and we would like you to consider them. Are there concerns over building foundations, considering that it is on the water table is too high? Yes is the answer. Will there be an increase in traffic and cause wider issues in Caersws? Yes. In conclusion, many relevant items have not been placed on the portal. There are many discrepancies between information on Powys County Council portal and officer's report for the actual density of the site, parking policy, activity travel requirement, and much, much more. I could go on. There is also it's also obvious that the Natural Resources Wales and Highways and other consultees have grave concerns about this development. There are far too many unanswered questions, too many for me to qualify, and who has a time to take it, and I can't do this at this moment. We urge you, the council, to prioritise protecting current families and the environment over this poorly planned housing expansion. And I urge you, the committee, to refuse this application as it is not fit for purpose. If granted, it will devastate our village and many families who suffer as a result. And who will take responsibility for the adverse effects this development is sure to create?
Thank you.
Would you buy a home in this flooded piece of land?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's no need to search seats. There's no need to just switch your light off. And then
Yeah,
it'll
David can just.
work.
No, just swap seats. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. You also have 8 minutes and the time is yours when you're ready. Thank you.
Before I start my objections, a brief introduction. I'm a retired civil engineer with over 30 years experience in UK geotechnical contracting and have an honours degree in civil engineering from Loughborough. I've lived in Llanonnog for 25 years. It has been near impossible to compress this application and convey the level of feeling endured by the homeowners of North Caersws into 8 minutes. They have been incredibly patient as their properties continue to be flooded. The sections are general, this application, a closing statement, and a brief conclusion. Okay, Carol, you can start the clock. Thank you. General, objecting to this application has the support of the entire Caersws Community Council, who have also objected. The Mantrig catchment of 4.5 kilometres square runs down steeply from above Llanonnog and then meanders into North Caersws, and it exceeds NRW description of a small watercourse, which is less than 3 kilometres squared. There are many videos and photos of flooding, and assume officers and councillors have seen these, which occur several times a year, affecting over 30 properties over at least 50 years. The site visit by the case officer is assumed to be done during a flood to fully appreciate its nature and extent, and this still requires confirmation. The Henry rain gauge administered by NRW only 200 yards from this site shows 8 months of the last 12 months are well above average rainfall, 3 months of which had double the amount of rainfall, with a maximum of 200 millimetres in December 23. This application, the trial pit ground investigation is inadequate. Carried out in late July 23 during a dry period, valley gravels were found at a shallow depth of 1.1 metres below a thin layer of clay and topsoil. A groundwater seep was recorded in the base of the pits at approximately 1.5 metres before they were quickly filled in. In contrast, a local brick mortar lined well only 100 metres from this site and 2.1 metres deep has recorded highest standing water level of only 75 millimetres below ground level. No foundation type has been proposed. The lack of seasonal groundwater data gives significant design and construction risk to normal footings. The application already admits there may be flooding issues by raising finished floor levels by 300 millimetres. Significant ponding on the site of these proposed houses has been observed, which leads me on to the attenuation. There are major risks with this. Risk of overtopping, as the pond is unlikely to be empty for 6 months of the year and could fill within 1 day. No geomembrane lining with subsequent groundwater ingress from the underlying gravel. The outlet head wall at the rear of the site, right in the area of the Mantrig, will not allow water to leave the attenuation at time of flooding. So again, overtopping occurs. The stated outlet volume of 5.8 litres per second will be exceeded from gardens and hard standings into the Mantrig. Homeowners have no confidence that this attenuation proposal works and that it will give no flood risk as stated. The standard annual rainfall figure of 970 millimetres used by Sumners is contrary to the 1300 millimetres using Hendrin data. Importantly, the drainage drawing 806 by Sumner shows at the bottom of the attenuation pond the invert levels of surface and foul drains are all at similar levels to the base of the clay strata and all go to the rear of the site where flooding occurs. This is asking for trouble. Closing statements. When this site was first put forward as a candidate site many years ago, climate change was not seen to be the monster it is today. In 2021, the previous Minister, Julie James, said, "Adapt to the inevitable consequences of climate change." The Chief Planner, Neil Hemmington, referred to the need to run applications and the SAB process at the same time, as detailed in Schedule 3 of the Floodwater Management Act. This sound government advice has not been followed. Although a revised TAN 15 is still awaited, most of the current TAN 15, which provides excellent guidance on flooding matters, has been ignored by both the applicant and the planning officer. The lead flood authority's no comment response of the 23rd of February does not allow the case officer to make proper judgments from the primary flood expert. On this basis alone, a refusal would be logical. The groundwater conditions on this site throughout the year have been underestimated, and engineering borehole with long-term piezometers recording accurate standing water levels should have been carried out. Havran Duffadui letter of the 1st of Feb relates to foul and surface drains, stating that the development should provide a satisfactory means of drainage as well as reducing the risk of creating or exacerbating a flood problem. Once again, not done or proven. My final conclusions. Throughout this long process, over 12 months, the local authority have been in a quandary with this application. I and others have been frustrated by the poor communication from them on important matters, either not addressing, not replying, and even missing important information, and have been economical with the truth. It is not a well-designed scheme. It is an inconsiderate scheme making flooding worse downstream. And after reading the officer's report, they are still in a quandary and have conveniently skirted the key issues and concerns, preferring to condition them into the long grass. Flooding is a material planning consideration according to the planning handbook issued by the Welsh Government and in May 22 and has to be taken into account. This site is not a suitable and resilient site in terms of flooding in a highly vulnerable area completely surrounded by C2 designation according to NRW November 24 update. It is considered inappropriate to build houses here. The recommendation puts too much emphasis on conditionally approving something now without any SAB process having taken place. The lengthy discussions between the case officer and her experts, disappointingly, have not been made public. Government rules have not been followed, and it is understandable that flooded homeowners are objecting when the LFA have said it would be unlikely to gain SAB approval. NRW have further recommended that the Welsh Government take this application on board should this be approved by the Planning Committee under their holding direction. It is an absurd location to still be considering a housing development and should have come off the LDP years ago. Taking a cautious approach now on flooding and protecting the 30 homes from this development is the right thing to do here. The climate has changed and this application makes flooding worse. It should be refused. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans. If you now go there, now I'd like to ask the agent, Mr. Mike Hatchell and Mr. Geraint Jarman, you two would like to take your seats. And to remind you that you have a combined total of 16 minutes in which to address the committee. You can split that however you feel appropriate.
Good morning. Thank you for.
Sorry, Mr. Jarman. Jam, can you take your light off? Very good. And perfect. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today as the agent regarding the proposed housing development at Penborder. This is a significant project, and I understand that it has generated considerable discussion within the community. It is important, however, that we look at facts to assess this development based on planning policies, environmental considerations, and long-term needs of the village. Caersus has been identified as a large village in the local development plan, meaning it's been designated as an area suitable for sustainable growth. There is a clear need for more housing, particularly smaller and affordable homes, to support local families and future generations. The proposed development will deliver 29 new homes with a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bed houses, ensuring a variety of housing options for different needs. As previously mentioned by Lorraine, the requirement under local policy is for 10% of new housing to be affordable. As such, we're offering 3 dedicated affordable homes. These will be integrated within the centre of the development, which helps ensure their success long term, as well as creating a balanced and inclusive community. The homes are designed to meet the identified local need with a large number of 2 and 3 bed units. This ensures that properties across the site are affordable for local families and individuals, allowing local residents who are either getting onto the property ladder or looking to downsize to remain within their existing community, whilst freeing up the larger homes, family homes in the locality. A major concern for residents has been the potential for flooding in the area, and the site does contain some land within a flood zone. However, a cautionary approach has been taken on this revised application through the amalgamation of both the Dam C3 flood map and the flood map for planning, as indicated on the submitted plan. This ensures that no homes, roads or gardens are sited within any defined flood zone, and we've taken a cautionary approach, which also takes into account potential consequences for ongoing climate change, which does include the raising of floor levels. This ensures that no homes, this area then is left aside for public open space. A flood consequence assessment was carried out in consultation with NRW, and following this assessment, the development was redesigned from the previous outline approval to remove all residential construction from flood-prone areas. Additionally, the improved drainage systems, including attenuation ponds and SUDs, will help manage surface water effectively and reduce flood risks for both new and existing homes. While concerns around flooding are understandable, it is important to note that all developments are subject to stringent flood risk regulations, and this project meets those standards, including mitigation measures that have been reviewed and approved by relevant environmental authorities. Furthermore, if the council are minded to grant approval today, the development is subject to further scrutiny of the SAB application prior to any development being able to commence. This further ensures that there will be no increased flood risk owing to the development. Another key concern raised by residents is whether the development aligns with the character of Caersus. The village has a mix of traditional red brick homes, semi-detached houses and modern bungalows, and the proposed development reflects this variety. The design follows the cul-de-sac layout internally, with homes positioned around courtyard settings, which will create a sense of community while maintaining an open and spacious feel. The materials proposed are in keeping with existing properties, ensuring that the new development blends well with the surrounding environment. Concerns have been raised about the height of new homes, particularly in relation to neighbouring properties. And while there is a bungalow to the east of the site, the majority of neighbouring houses are 2-storey homes, meaning that the proposed development will not be out of place in terms of height. Existing hedgerows and green buffers will also be retained to further soften the visual impact, and the Carno Road facing properties are designed in a linear fashion to reflect the historic layout of the village, therefore reinforcing the existing street scene. Any new development must consider its impact on local infrastructure, including roads, public transport, community services, and the development will be accessed via the A470 trunk road. And the site's road network has been assessed by both Welsh Government and Powys County Highways Departments. Both authorities have confirmed the access point meets safety standards and the projected increase in traffic is acceptable. Additional pedestrian pathways and a new bus stop will be introduced to improve connectivity between the new homes and wider village. Concerns have also been raised about the impact on local services, such as schools and healthcare facilities. However, as part of the LDP, these factors have already been taken into account, ensuring that the village can accommodate a growing population. Planning policies require assessments of local service capacity before housing sites are allocated, meaning that the infrastructure concerns have already been considered during the planning process, as the site is allocated for housing in the LDP. Modern developments are expected to prioritise sustainability, and this project includes a number of eco-friendly measures, including new tree planting, hedgerow conservation, biodiversity improvements to maintain and enhance local wildlife habitats. We also intend to install air source heat pumps, solar arrays, and electric car charge points to each property, providing renewable energy solutions that both reduce reliance on fossil fuels and reduce the risk of fuel poverty for the residents. And large areas of the site will remain undeveloped, providing green spaces for recreation and drainage management. Public engagement is an essential part of the planning process, and local residents have expressed concerns about various issues, many of which have been addressed through modifications to the original plan. For example, the outline consent was for 41 homes, but this has been reduced to 29 in order to avoid the flood-prone areas, while ensuring the housing density remains appropriate. Noise concerns relating to construction activities will be managed through restrictions on working hours and dust control measures. In addition, the location of air source heat pumps will be carefully considered to minimise noise impact on neighbouring properties. This development has been thoroughly assessed and revised to ensure it meets the highest standards of planning, environmental impact and community benefit. The proposal is supported by detailed technical assessments, and planning officers have recommended conditional approval. However, final approval must be granted by Welsh ministers. Doing this additional oversight ensures that all regulatory requirements are met before construction begins. In summary, this development offers a balanced and carefully considered approach to housing growth in Caersws, provides much needed homes, including affordable options, while ensuring that flood risks, environmental concerns and infrastructure needs are properly addressed. The proposal meets all necessary planning policy and has been revised based on public input to ensure it is suitable for the village. I therefore kindly request that the council before me votes in line with their officer recommendations and grants conditional approval today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Jarman.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity to speak on behalf of my brother and I. But firstly, before moving forward, I would request that the objectors to my right stay quiet, because when Mike was talking, all I had was mumbled from especially Mr. George. And that's unacceptable.
Can I advise you, you address the committee in relation to this application, but I'll make sure that everyone's quiet.
Okay, thank you. My name is Geraint Jarman. I'm joint owner of the planning site at Pembrova Caersws, farmland that has been in the family ownership for more than nearly 100 years. The land in question was formally adopted in the UDP in March 2010. At that time, we had two options. Firstly, to ignore the UDP decision, or secondly, to be more proactive and seek advice from experts to prepare an outline planning application. We were indeed taking a massive step into the unknown. We discovered very quickly that the application would demand a great deal of effort, capital and patience. We have all found that the last 15 years has been a very challenging experience, and have never doubted our belief in our passion for this project. Otherwise, we wouldn't have taken all this time, because we believe in what we were doing and we thought what we were doing was right as it is. Following the summer of 2010, John Pearson of Powys County Council led the initial pre-application stage, and in 2012, the access and transport assessment was agreed by Andrew Cochrane, then Alan Wynne-Jones in 2012, and Jason Ingram in 2019, all of the Welsh Government Highways Directorate. Today, we are here to present the modified detailed application for your agreement. I must say, as a local farmer whose family have owned the land for generations, I feel very proud of the fact that development could provide improved opportunities for many in our community. In fact, I have been approached by many young people because the impression I have is that some say it's all negative about our application. That's not the case. Many have approached us asking when is the development moving forward, so they're looking for houses. And most of these people will be young people. And also this development will be an intergenerational community, because we've got houses for 2, 3 and 4 bedroom houses available. This development will have the added benefit of reducing rural population, a concern highlighted by the Powys County Council in the document Vision 25, to develop 250 affordable homes by 2025. Many local businesses would have also benefited from increased business, which will make the village sustainable, as explained by Martin Wheel, Powys County Council, when he said, by focusing on development on our towns and large villages, it provides direction and certainty to support investment and enable economic opportunities to be seized to grow and support viable service centres and for housing developments to accommodate our growing and changing household needs. I feel it is very important for our community to remain vibrant to benefit young and old. And to conclude, I am an honest and honourable man with integrity. These values have been at the forefront of everything we have done. We have brought this this is why we have brought this application forward. It has been a marathon, and a very frustrating marathon, but I believe in this application, and it has enabled us to have strength, and this has enabled us to have strength to continue. As a local person born and reared here with a family myself, I feel a very positive outcome for this application will truly benefit and make a positive difference, which will enable my community to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Etchell. Allow you a couple of minutes just to get back to your seats. Members, over to you. I'm looking for the first hand to indicate who wishes to speak. Councillor Carl Lewis, please. Followed by Councillor Alwyn Vaughan. Councillor Carl.
Thank you, Chair. I just find it absolutely staggering that Land Drainage have not wished to make a comment on this application. Whenever you would want Land Drainage to make a comment, it would be on this application. I take it, Chair, I'm not in the chamber, but I take it that you don't have a representative from NRW with you today?
No.
No. And this application for me hinges on what NRW have stated. I feel for Mr. Jarman. I feel for the residents around Manthrick Brook. I feel for Mr. Jarman because he can only raise his properties up 300 mil. And I feel for the people the other side Manthrick Brook because that 300 mil could, it's just saying could, push water onto their property further. It's one of these situations where as Councillor Les said, we welcome development and, you know, we'd like to see development like this built out. It's just a shame that we've got this threat of flooding there. I know it's been appeased in the documents, but I still have, you know, local knowledge. I only live 2.5 miles up the road in Llandinham. And I know that field does flood. And I was chairman the last time this came round in outline planning permission. So I just find that the development is very close to the boundary, the flood boundary there. And yeah, I'll wait to hear from other councillors before I make a decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carl. If I'm correct, I don't think I heard a question other than asking if anybody from NRW is present. No.
I'm happy to come back if you want.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Camera on. Just come back really on the flood boundaries and the extent of the system in Wales that we've got at the moment. There's two sources of flood map data that we have. One's the development advice maps, which accompanied TAN 15 when it was first published back in 2004. It has been updated. I checked before the meeting, it was last updated by NRW in 2020. So that's the most up-to-date version of the development advice map. That actually is a little bit closer to the river, the extent of that compared to the flood map for planning. So the other source is the flood map for planning, which was begun by NRW and was to accompany and will accompany the new TAN 15 when it is published by Welsh Government. It's not there at the moment. So the 2004 TAN 15 is still the up-to-date policy advice from Welsh Government that we must follow. The flood map for planning extent is shown on the plan there. It does make an allowance for climate change as well. So the evidence that we have, and it's provided by NRW, shows that the extent of the floodplain doesn't actually come to where the dwellings are being built or proposed to be built.
So it's outside the extent of the floodplain. I think I've just heard Councillor Carl Lewis raise that there has been flooding on site. Again, that's the sort of information, to my mind, that should be provided to NRW. If the local community has that type of evidence, they could feed that into NRW, who could look at the extent of flood outlines and the floodplain. That's not been changed though. We've got the best available evidence that we have, okay, when it comes to the extent. So it is possible to challenge. There's a process that NRW have for challenging these boundaries as well. So that could be, if you're looking at it from a community perspective, saying it's wrong, or you could be looking at it from a developer's perspective and saying it's wrong. So that hasn't happened to my knowledge. If they have tried challenging it, the map hasn't been altered. Okay, and I would, I think Graham Astley is in the meeting. It may be more questions, Chair, but I would suggest we at some point bring Graham in to explain the separate SAB approval process for sustainable drainage.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that information. Yeah, we have who have I got? So Graham Astley, and Graham Evans, sorry, Graham Astley and Alistair Knox with us. And we've also got Ricky Richard Ecology as well in the chamber with us for members if they are minded to ask a question directed at one of those offices. Councillor Elwyn, please, and then Councillor Karina.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, diolch, Gyfeillion. Yes, this is a challenging application, obviously, for a number of reasons, and we have to give careful consideration to matters today. Some of us recall having a site visit here a couple of years ago when we approved subsequently 41 units. So the fact that it has come down to 29 should be seen in a positive light, perhaps taking into consideration the concerns about flooding on that basis. It is a factor also for us that it is in the LDP, whether somebody agrees with that or not, it is a fact that we have to consider. And the fact that, as I say, there has been a previous approval. I noticed Caersws Community Council highlights the need for Section 106 in relation to Manthric. Perhaps we can get a clarification whether that is being considered and will be included in any conditions. And perhaps also clarification, somebody made a reference that it was actually NRW that have asked Welsh Government to have a look at this application itself. Is that the case, or is that just a guesswork? Perhaps somebody could clarify that point.
Thank you, Councillor Elwyn. Lorraine, would you take up those
I
points?
believe it was members of the public who requested that.
The holding director.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know who requested.
No.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm afraid.
It's our understanding that as somebody from within the public has referred this to Welsh Government and highlighted their concerns, and it's not been called in by Welsh Government, is what I understand. Gemma, are you sure?
Yeah.
Can I come back, Chair?
Please.
Yeah, just on the holding direction, we never know the person that may have requested it, or whether Welsh, for whatever reason, there's a holding direction come from Welsh Government. As we said or Lorraine said at the outset, holding directions, the letter enables us as an authority to refuse something, but what we can't do is we could be minded to permit, but we cannot permit. We'd have to refer the applicant, if so the committee was minded to approve, we'd have to refer it to Welsh Government. They will then consider whether they want to call it in to determine it themselves. So that's the purpose of a holding direction. NRW, I believe, have also asked, because there's an FCA, flood consequence assessment, sorry for acronyms, that it's a bit like the application we had at the previous committee, whether they could check the conditions are adequate as well. So there's a referral mechanism there, or a subject to, again, if the committee was minded. So there's two further requirements there. Plus, of course, when it comes to drainage and surface water, we've got land drainage and the separate SAB approval as well.
Are all members clear on that? Is everyone happy that that's point has been addressed? I'll allow someone to come in now if they want to ask anything. Please, Karina. Yeah.
Sorry, can I come back?
Can I just ask Karina one thing, Councillor Elwyn?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll come back to you, the question about the, 106.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to ask about the mitigation measures, and I wanted to ask Graham Astley, because I think he's a specialist in land drainage. The hard surfaces here will contribute to the surface water problems, and I wanted to know how the attenuation feature would work and how drainage could be improved in Caersoos as a result of this. Thank you.
Graham, are you happy to pick up that question from Councillor Karina?
Yes, I can, Chair. The attenuation system that's been provided obviously will collect, that's the intention here, from the imperial areas to accommodate what would be the 1 in 100 with climate change value of storage. And then this is showing a piped outfall to the Manfred Brook watercourse. But there are concerns, obviously, with the SAB, that's the current design of what's been shown at this planning committee, certainly would not be compliant with the Welsh Government's national standards, as we, the requirements we see. So, and that includes the what's termed the destination. It's how it's disposed. Its rate of runoff from the site would also be challenged from the SAB, and I think there's a few other points that clearly that Mr. David Evans brought up. With the outfall, certainly when it's drowned out, i.e. when there's high water within the Manfred, how does the mechanisms and how does the disposal operate? So there are concerns from the SAB.
Sorry, so Graham, are you saying that the current amelioration isn't quite sufficient for the project?
What we don't have is a SAB application in front of us. So the technical detail, which the SAB is this technical approval, and from what we can see here, from our cursory look, it would not satisfy a SAB approval.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Councillor Elwyn, please, thank you for your patience.
No, no problem. Yeah, well, the comments there are quite illuminating. Anyway, section 106 is what I was think there's a reference to it, and there's a call for it by the Community Council. Where are we with that as part of any conditions?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think, and I might, this was a while ago, might be incorrect. I don't believe there was a formal, there was sort of a comment about it. I don't believe there was a very detailed sort of request, particularly. It was more a loose suggestion. I may need to go back and.
I think on page 21, it does say Caersoos Community Councillors therefore require that should the application be granted, a section 106 condition be applied to the developer to undertake works necessary to alleviate the current flooding.
Do you want me to come back?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to section 106 there are, well, there's the policy requirements or circular advice and legislative advice around when you seek a 106, it's got to be reasonable, it's got to be necessary, it's got to be relevant, and so on. So I understand the community may have asked for that, but what we've got is a development. They may disagree, the community, that sits outside the flood zone. So I'm struggling to make the step to the relevancy and the need for that when it comes to a 106. So it's going to struggle to meet the test, in my opinion, for seeking a 106 agreement. Okay.
Councillor Elwyn.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I just, in light of the comments that have been made about the separate application for flooding, wouldn't it be, I know that usually comes after the approval of a site. But in this context, wouldn't it have been better if that had been sorted out and approved first before coming to this application? Because that would answer many of any concerns that residents legitimately have.
Movers, please.
Yeah, I'll come back and respond to that for me, Chair. I think it would have been helpful again. I think what it is though is it is a separate consenting regime. So we have to determine the planning application on the basis of the information that's been submitted with it. And then a separate approval process deals with the SAB application of sustainable drainage. Clearly, if the SAB application hasn't been submitted, it's difficult to know whether if this committee was minded to approve, and ultimately it's not called in, etc., and it got permission, difficult to know what amendments would be required to this permission, but we've really got to deal with it on face value as what is in front of us. It could, if it can't get SAB approval or through this design, it would lead to an amendment in due course to this planning permission. So I think the logic of what Councillor Elwyn is saying is sound, but they are separate processes, so we still have to deal with this one. I think we're beginning to see it more where applicants, developers are thinking about the two together. They need to be in alignment, and that's potentially what we've got here is could be a misaligned approval process.
I think all members of this committee would feel a lot more comfortable if they were sitting in front of us side by side for us to be able to reach the conclusion. Councillor Hugh, please.
Yeah, that was the first part of my question, so I won't go and rehearse it again. Thank you, Peter. There's several issues in the report, and it's an excellent report, so thank you for that. And there's been some good speakers here. There's a few issues about traffic and roads that have been raised in the report and today. Things like, I don't know if there's a highways officer present, but can the highways officer confirm the access is correct and proper, because it is a 50-mile-an-hour road. I know it reasonably well and have visited the site as happened. There was mention of the footpath. Can the highways officer comment on that aspect of one of the speakers mentioned a footpath which had a break in it, which may be relevant or not, but it is said in the report that this is a footpath into town. There is mention of a bus stop, and there is one of the speakers mentioned a bus stop on that road could be a dangerous thing. Is that an actual proposal within the application? There's car parking on site that was mentioned, that it was insufficient. I don't know if anybody can comment on that, and I take these as a traffic issue. That's why I'm collecting them. And there was also mention of a turning point on site, and particular reference to the fire service, although there is a report from the fire service in the report which says that they're happy with it. So there's a few questions there that are from the report and the speakers. Would it be possible to have a highways officer comment on them, please, Chair?
Certainly. Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Hugh. Alistair, I believe you're with us.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Got all those points. There's 4 or 5 there.
Yeah, you might have to remind me on what they all were. I did try to jot them down. But in relation to the access off the trunk road, obviously that's a matter for Welsh Government because it's a trunk road, so I can't sort of comment on that. But obviously they have responded to you, so you know, they seem to be content with that, and they've asked for conditions to be applied. Certainly, I've picked this up sort of late on, so the person that's sort of been dealing with it unfortunately isn't available today. But looking through it, I can see that there's been some toing and froing between the developer and ourselves. Things have been tweaked and changed, and from what I'm seeing, the major sort of concerns have been dealt with. The parking, yes, it's not quite up to the CSS standard, but again, that is setting the sort of the upper limit. I suppose I like to see the full limit of parking, within the standard, so that we do avoid problems in the future. But I think I could sort of be content that there's adequate parking here. There's references to turning manoeuvres for vehicles, which includes refuse collection and fire service. And I think I think I'm certainly cited on something, and I'm not sure if it's on the portal yet, but certainly there is something that sort of indicates that they've eased some of the design so that they can accommodate those turning manoeuvres. I think the other issue then was about the connecting footpath, wasn't it? So there were two, I think, that I've seen about connecting footpath. One is on the is it the east side, which has sort of actually been removed as a formal connecting footpath because it now sits in a green space. I think it would have provided a sort of a short link through the corner of the site, but sometimes those can be problematical anyway. So I think the site is served by an adequate footpath off the trunk road. So I've no sort of real concerns there about pedestrian access to the site or within the site. Have I missed anything, Councillor Hughes? Sorry.
The other question that Councillor Hugh mentioned was about the bus stop, and I think one of the speakers,
Yeah,
well, in her address to the committee.
yeah. The bus stop, I believe I saw it as a condition. Again, it will sit on the trunk road, so it would be really for them to comment. I don't believe they've raised any concerns about the bus stop. And I'm sort of certainly familiar with other locations where there are similar bus stops on a trunk road, so I'm presuming that they have no concerns about it.
Councillor Hugh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Alistair, and I respect your views. There's a few questions there, to be honest with you, but
Yep.
the last one with the bus stop, so it would mean probably that there's a pull-in area for a bus, which would presumably need a bit of work and a cost, and that is down to the developer. Should it be, well, it's not for our approval from what you're saying, is that it's the Welsh government, is paid to, is it, or Welsh government, or?
It would require Welsh Government approval, yes, because it's within the trunk road. So whilst Powers has a role to play in bus stops for bus services and things, the actual construction of something like that, because it's within the trunk road, it would have to have Welsh Government approval.
So it's a separate application to what we are discussing here?
It would be a separate discussion with Welsh Government, yes. Yeah, because it's a construction within their existing asset. Whether they would require a separate planning consent, I'm not sure. I'd have to defer to Peter on that. But I know they've recently done one in Kilmary, I think it is. A similar sort of thing where they've made provision. So it's not unheard of. And it's something they're obviously keen to support as much as possible.
Yes, and it's just to clarify, really, it's not, that isn't in our gift today to say yes or no to as a part of our approval or objection. It's a separate issue.
Yes, I think it's
desirable because we're out of town.
Yes, yeah.
And sorry, can I ask for clarification again? It's to do with the turning points on site. The plans that we have before us here doesn't show a turning point within the design. But are you saying within? If I haven't picked it up in the report, Chair, I apologise, but I'm not clear where those turning points are for things like refuse, and I'm sure the fire brigade will get it.
Yeah. If you look at, so what they've done, they've actually, so if you look at the site layout plan that's showing now, so when you come off the trunk road, if you take the first left, you've obviously got what we would call, yeah, that's the one, you've got what we would call the hammerhead.
Yeah.
So the idea there is obviously the vehicle would pull into one side of that, reverse backwards, and then be able to pull back out. So that would be that would count as the turning area for ourselves. If you then go to the right off the access road, yeah, that one there, obviously that's a very short stub. So what you would expect a driver of a large vehicle to do is to pull forward where the arrow is now and then reverse into that short stub. Yeah, that's the sort of maneuver there. So that would count as a turning area. And then if you go to the last area, you've got a similar arrangement there where you've got those two short stubs. So that would then form the suitable turning area. And I think the concern that I saw expressed was that it was a little bit tight with the swept paths as they'd been checked. So they'd eased the dimensions there just to ensure that those were feasible.
Okay.
So those are what we would call the turning areas. So you won't actually see a defined turning head that just becomes a dead area for no other use. It's built into the overall layout of the estate.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alistair.
Yeah.
Thank you both. So just for clarity, car parking spaces, not quite up to the standard, but you feel it's adequate. Bus
Yeah.
stop, that's Welsh Government, as is access, footpath you're content with, and you're also
Yeah.
content with the turning points.
Yes.
Good, happy. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Councillor Clare, please, Councillor Clare Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's fortunate that I came after Councillor Hugh because most of my questions were raised by him and answered by Alistair, because I couldn't quite square the officer's conclusion that highways were happy with the comments in the report about the lack of a swept path analysis and the substandard parking, but most of that seems to have been answered in the last question. But the one question that I still have that wasn't addressed, in looking at the parking standards across the site as a whole, I was just a little bit concerned about the garage sizes and whether or not they're realistically big enough to be classed as a bona fide car parking spaces, and we're not going to end up with a situation where they're not big enough to accommodate cars these days, and even though on the plan they look like a space, they're not actually usable. So I don't know if highways or the planning officer could come back on that. That was my first question. And the other question was just so I'm clear, that does the holding direction apply to the previous consent for 41 units, or does it apply to this current application for 29? Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Officer will correct me, but the previous one for 41 is now expired. That's expired September 23. Yeah. And what was the other question, Sally? It's just for this one, yes. And in relation to the garage sizes, Alistair, would you be able to address the concerns of Councillor Clare, please?
Yes, yeah. Certainly from what I've seen in the application, yeah, I think the agent has sort of indicated that yes, they are of the correct size to be counted. So yeah, so they have been included in that calculation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think you've got a legacy hand, Councillor Hugh. So I would now like to ask Councillor Jonathan, followed by Councillor Gareth, and then Councillor Angela, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Yeah, I've got two questions. First question's regarding access to the site, and the second one is regarding flooding. If I could ask Lorraine if she could go back to her presentation and show the view along the road, partially showing the access. Not from the other direction, if you could, Lorraine. It looked like there was that one there. Yeah. I can see there's a fence there, non-agricultural fence, I guess. Is that part of the design for the new access where permission to be granted?
No, so this won't be the new access. This is the access into the green lane that's on the west of the site currently. So that's facing the Carno direction. So
okay.
So actually the access will be coming out around here.
Yeah.
So
okay, so on a straight piece of road and with no visibility issues at all.
Yeah. Is that what you need?
Councillor Jonathan, are you happy with that?
Happy with that view, and thank you for that. The second really is the much bigger issue, much more complicated issue of flooding. You know, as a committee, we've been asked to consider and assess the flood risk, which in itself is highly technical, and the sort of conflicting views of members of the public, some highly experienced and qualified members of the public, and those that we've seen in the report. Showing the mitigation to flooding. I mean, I can only speak from somebody who lives in a floodplain in Myford, where there's effectively a planning stop because of the flood risk, a similar level of flood risk to the part of the field that isn't being developed. And we have a flood mitigation scheme which was built in the 1960s, which has proved to be highly effective, and we haven't experienced flooding in the village of Myford since it was built in 1966. But despite that, the area of flood risk is still showing well inland of that, or on the protected side of that flood mitigation scheme. And there was effectively a planning stop in the village of Maigan because of that perceived flood risk. Not a real flood risk, certainly not up until now. We've had no flooding, as I say, since 1966, but it's perceived, and as such, no development has taken place, certainly in recent years, because of that perceived risk. It seems that there is a real risk in this field up to the point at which development is taking place. And it seems from local speakers as though that flooding has been observed and seen in this part of the field. So I'm just conflicted really as to wanting to encourage, clearly, like all of us, development wherever possible, and the development of low cost housing, much needed, but the need to be very mindful of flooding. It just seems that the boundary between the flood risk area in this case and the development area is incredibly close, with very little margin for error. And I need to be comfortable in my mind that there is sufficient protection for those householders from risk to allow me to feel confident to vote to approve this. Bearing in mind the significant margin that's been built into protecting my community. We're talking half a kilometre from the flood mitigation scheme. Here it seems to be a tiny margin for error. How am I to be comforted that there is zero risk to these new householders should this development be approved and progress?
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. Yeah, Peter.
I'll come back on the Councillor Jonathan's flooding question. As I said earlier, I think the boundaries that NRW use, they account for sort of additional climate change. It's climate change proofing. So the properties, I'm just trying to look where it is on the plan there. It's in that sort of, the closest property I can see is probably in the middle, the block just on the top road to the right. But the dwelling is outside the extent of the floodplain. And at the end of the day, we as professional planners have to determine in line with planning policy. And at the moment, the site is outside the extent of the flood extent. So it would comply with planning policy at the moment. I think I can't say any more than that, really. Yeah, NRWs, I've already said it, so the community have heard me. If they disagree with that, they could provide evidence to NRW and challenge the extent. But this is the best evidence that we've got. And it's not that old evidence either. It's only 2-3 years old as evidence.
Peter, can I just ask Lorraine just to come in as well, please?
Yeah, if it's helpful, when I actually went on site to take these photos, it is a flat field and it looks like a flat field from the photos, but there is actually a little rise that goes, and it very clearly follows it was quite interesting to see that you even just being in the field, you could see where the flood extent would be. So it's not huge, but it's pronounced. So I imagine that's how they've got the information.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, do you wish to come back?
Yes, just very briefly. I mean, I have to be comfortable in my mind that there is enough margin for error that, that we're not building houses in an area that in the future or even near future is likely to be flooded. And when I come to making a decision, it'll be on that basis really. And it seems to me that the margin for error in this case is tiny because of where we've seen flooding or where flooding has been shown in the past and where we're allowing development. So that's how I will, come to a decision. But no, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. Councillor Gareth and Councillor Angela, please. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. Can you confirm, is this based on 1 in 100 years flooding risk or 1 in 1,000 years flooding risk?
Who wishes to respond to that?
I want a second if I can. It's
perhaps you could go back to the slide. It's got the
yeah.
shades, the blue, the dark blue and the light blue. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's 1 in 1,000 the full extent. So I think the I think,
Is that the lighter blue?
yeah,
one, is it?
it's the lighter blue one which reaches further away from the river.
Yeah.
And then that's really what we're trying to do, is make sure the development is outside of that flood extent, which is, it's not 1 in 1,000 years, it's the worst one flood event, the worst flood event in 1,000 flood events.
And obviously they're getting worse as we progress through climate change, etc. The other question I wanted to ask, and perhaps this is for Peter, I assume the fact that there may be question marks over access to the land to develop the proposed footpath is not a planning consideration at the moment. That would be a condition, and that's down to the, if approved, that's down for that local negotiations, etc. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor Gareth. Councillor Angela, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm really torn over this application. On the one hand, I think it's an absolutely perfect application for a small rural town. We do need to ensure that our towns are able to survive and thrive, and in order for that we need dwellings for the residents, families, young people, as the applicant has said. And I think he needs to be applauded. He's obviously been working on this for a long time and has amended the plans to take into account that flooding, and I'm sure it's been a hellish journey and very stressful for him. However, unfortunately, what I'm hearing today is words like concern and adequate, and that's not really, is that good enough? So I still have concern about the flooding. I take on board what you're saying, the computer mapping, NRW, the experts show us where flooding is. And yet we've seen photographs that clearly show the flood area. So as Lorraine has explained, the lay of the land, but the rest of the land is very, very wet. And that water will have to go somewhere. I'm guessing the applicant has chosen this location because this is the location they own. So I understand that entirely. But the other issue I have is the location of this particular development in relation to the village, because when we look at those photographs, that road does not look wide enough to be putting pavements for people to walk to the village. And it looks, is it half a mile from village centre? Should we be building properties now on the edges of villages where people can't walk in? Should we not be encouraging people to walk to school, to work, to the shops, etc.? So I'm not sure that I've been convinced that that's safe access for that. One of the speakers mentioned that the bus stops is in a 50-mile-an-hour zone. I think by one of the photos, it looks like it's 40-mile-an-hour, but still that's fast, isn't it, to be crossing a road? So is there any option there to extend the 20-mile-an-hour zone? Is that too far out of the village? Which then would add to my thinking, I'm thinking out loud here as I'm going, is thinking, well, if it's too far out of the village for the 20-mile-an-hour zone, then it's too far out of the village for the development. Like I say, I'm really torn on this. I really feel for the applicant. I think, you know, he's clearly worked very hard, and there is this good range of properties. And I can imagine young people who would be thinking there's a house for me. But I don't think the questions and concerns have really been answered. In terms of flooding, a thought, where the roadways, etc. are on the estate, can that be a surface that absorbs water? Can that risk be minimised?
Yeah. Right. So I'll bring Graham in first.
Yeah.
Graham, would you be able to address the question from Councillor Angela, please, in relation to what the surface of the road could be made of?
Yeah, like we've progressed under SAB schemes on other projects. Yes, the road can be made of a permeable paving of a kind that can allow water to percolate through the surface and immediately be sort of collected and stored beneath that permeable surface. What we see in front of us is shall we say, a more conventional design, which is a gully, pipe, pond, piped outfall, with a hydro brick system, with a attenuated system, obviously in there. But yes, you can change that, and that would be more in line with SAB requirements. It provides certainly aspects of water quality, which this current application under, you know, for SAB purpose, it doesn't.
Thank you, Graham.
Okay, so it's more about the access, the pedestrianised access, the bus stops. I just don't see how we can approve this without knowing that that is also going to be in place. What if we approve this and the bus stops don't happen, the pavement doesn't happen?
I think without Welsh Government doing that, that they would be looking at this as a whole, and is that something we could condition, Peter?
I'm going to let the rain.
Yeah, there is a condition about the bus stop, and that would have to be agreed and dealt with prior to commencement, if I'm remembering rightly. So I don't have any concerns that a bus stop that couldn't be safe and appropriate. That would be dealt with under that. And if I can come back as well about the position of the site, it is an allocated housing site within the LDP, and obviously it does have the precedent of the outline consent from before. So this is one that has been deemed acceptable for housing in that allocation, in that location in the past, in terms of the distance from the village.
Can I ask Alistair just to come back and address a concern from Councillor Angela in relation to the footpath linking back to the town and what can and can't be achieved? And then I am going to ask members, I'm looking for a proposal now to moving this forward. I got 4 more hands up. I'm going to go then. I am really looking to move this on. So Alistair, would you be so kind as to just reconfirm what you said previously in relation to the footpath back to Caersws village centre?
Yeah, certainly. Just before I respond to that, could I just sort of add a little bit extra onto what Graham had said about the permeable surface on the estate as well? Because I think it's important, because it was raised by one of the speakers, I think David Evans, you know, and he raised some, you know, very valid engineering difficulties. So I think it was just so that members were clear that yes, whilst the permeable is a solution, it does come with difficulties as well because of the groundwater on the site. So, you know, I don't want people thinking that we don't understand that issue. We do, and that would be a key consideration for us. You know, it's all very well having a permeable surface, but how do you deal with water if it's got nowhere to go under that permeable surface? So it's a consideration we would have to have, and certainly it's one that Graham and I have discussed previously. So I think it's important to understand that, certainly for the public speakers who were listening as well. In terms of the footpath, yeah, I mean, it's obviously a trunk road. There is an existing footway. It varies in width from what I can see. And I think, yeah, if you go on Google, you can see it. It's perfectly adequate for walking. It's not sort of it's not sort of to the current standard that you would probably expect for sort of the latest active travel routes. But whether it would be difficult to ask a development of this size to actually enhance that route to that standard. So I think it's adequate for pedestrians, you know, for that site to get into Caersws. Yeah. Again, it's a trunk road matter, so I think, you know, if they had any concerns, I'm sure they would have raised it in their response. And as a Powys have some interest, obviously, from the active travel side. So I think, you know, it is reasonable for us to comment, but ultimately it would be for Welsh Government to consider. And I don't believe, I certainly haven't seen anything in any of their responses that suggests they have concerns about that.
Thank you. Angela?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll move on, and hopefully somebody will come up with a proposal and consider maybe adding something to it. Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. To me, this is down to one thing and one thing only, and that's the flood water. I think we should definitely have a site visit. And the range you said about the land, what is the difference in meters, the height? Does the land, you said it's almost level? So what is almost, does it undulate or is it flat?
Yeah, it's a flat field, and then it just rises slightly. So it's.
That takes me to my next question now. If we'd had a flood risk 20 years ago, how much of that field would have been covered? because where I live, I get up every morning, the River Iford's there. There's an Oxbow Lake. 30 years ago, it used to flood down the one side, and now the whole Dole covers. So what I'm saying is, in 20 years' time, are we going to come back and the water's going to be in those houses? Because the flooding is just getting worse and worse.
I don't think we can answer that.
No, well, it's you know, I'm disappointed. Like I think it was Carl who said before, disappointed with the NRW. To be fair, I think they could have done a bit better job for that. And it's just down to everything else. I don't, you know, it's fine, but I'm ready to propose refusal just because I'm not happy in my own mind. I can't say I don't want to meet somebody in 20 years' time living in those houses and they flooded.
Thank you, councillor. Yeah. Peter, you wishing to come back?
Yeah. Again, flooding is obviously the major issue of concern here. I've said it several times already. I think the flood extents are the worst case scenario. So they're building in, they're future proofing when it comes to climate change.
Yeah, but if they'd have done that 20 years ago, probably none of that field would be there. In my mind.
I haven't.
I know it's crystal ball job. I know. But
yeah, I haven't got the flood map in front of me from 20 years ago. Just trying to think, 2004 was when the TAN Technical Advice Note 15 was published. So there would have been development advice maps at that time. That's capable, as I said, over time of being updated, and it probably has been updated. I can still see the dam map, and it's slightly inside of that blue line. Okay, so that blue line is the worst case evidence that we have, which is the flood map for planning. Okay,
I think it was Councillor Andrew who said about Mr. Hamer, you know, he's tried hard, he's tried it. Yeah, to me, that LDP should, I don't know, has he got any land anywhere else? But he should be allowed to offset that, in my opinion.
That's not relevant.
I know it's not relevant, I know, but it's
right. In fact, just quickly finishing a minute with the flood map for planning. Gemma's just shared something with me, so it really is future-proofing it for a century ahead. So that's what it's trying to do. That's Welsh Government's words.
Okay. Right, as I said, as previously said, I'm keen to move this on. Councillor Gareth Pugh, then Councillor Alwyn Vaughan, and then Councillor Carl will be our final speaker. And after Councillor Carl opened up this discussion. Councillor Gareth Pugh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, it's evident that this application all hinges around the flooding. But we've heard that NRW are happy with this. We've heard again now of Peter that they've future-proofed it. And I trust that NRW would have done their job. We've also heard that the application complies with policy. Earlier on, those were the words of Peter. So as a committee, we run the risk of an appeal if we object to this. Therefore, based on all the evidence of all the consultees and all the professionals behind this, and they've all got modelling, I'm sure, to support it, I propose that we go with officer's recommendation, that of conditional consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. I will go to Councillor Elwyn, then Councillor Carl. I think I've had two proposals now, so I'll see what you two have to say, and then we'll look to progress. Councillor Elwyn.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'll assist your deliberations. On the one hand, this site is in the LDP and is allocated for housing, so that is crystal clear. And as just been mentioned there, if there was a total refusal, I think the applicant would be right and have to go to appeal and could well win on that basis. However, on the other hand, we have the situation which is the flooding concerns. And to me, the biggest concern perhaps is the comments made earlier about that the tank, the holding pond, if you like, issues, where would the water drain from, etc. And it doesn't meet up the required standards. So to me, I think it would be wise if those issues were resolved first, were agreed and approved by the SABS process before, because it's such a key fundamental point of this application. before the final approval of the housing, because it might well result in having to change the designs and layout yet again. So what I was going to suggest, Chair, is actually deferment of this approval until those matters have been resolved and met and approved up to standard by the SABS process. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Cynghorydd Vaughan. Diolch yn fawr. Ac i gorffen, Councillor Cowell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to suggest exactly the same thing as Councillor Elwyn Vaughan has suggested. I think, as I set out at the start of this meeting, it all hinges on flooding. I feel for Mr. Jarman, I feel for the residents of Caersws, and for me, exactly like Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, I think we should go for deferment. Happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. I'll ask Peter just to come in now, and then I will come back to Jeff, who gave the first proposal.
Yeah, I've just been checking with solicitor really around process here. I think if there's anything going contrary, whether it's contrary to officer recommendation or a deferral, the planning protocol asks members to articulate the planning reasons for doing so. So I want to be really clear if we go a different route or go against officer recommendation, what those planning reasons are. We will need those. And I'm just sort of foreseeing if it goes to the vote, Councillor Gareth Pugh has proposed. I'm not sure if anybody's seconded.
No, I haven't. I've had a proposal go against Councillor Jeff, who was the
Probably.
first one. Not seconded.
Okay.
Then had a proposal of Councillor Pugh, not seconded. Then a proposal of Councillor Elwyn
To defer.
to defer.
Okay, so I think what we need to be clear on it with Councillor Elwyn.
Sorry, sir, I can't take any members of the public. You can wave at me all day, but I cannot speak to allow anyone else to speak. So just so you're clear on that. Thank you.
Chair, will you allow me back in for 1 second, please?
I never saw your hand. I'll ask Councillor Hugh first because he's been indicating.
Yeah, having listened to the debate, I would wish to second Councillor Pugh's recommendation to support the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pugh.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, for letting me back in. Just to be consistent, okay, yes, you have your plan application and we have it all the time with industrial buildings, and then we've got to go through the process of the SABs and the SUDs and all the rest of it. I think at this stage, it would be very unfair to put the applicant to all the expense of going through his SABs and his SUDs and all of that before he knows whether or not he's got his planning application. Now, if, say, we were to go with the officer on this one today, it's still subject to him going out to get his SABs and his SUDs and his reports. So they will be there to make sure that the attenuation pond is correct and whatever after. But I think it's very unfair to put an applicant to thousands and thousands of pounds worth of expense, then still cross his fingers to come back to committee to see whether or not he gets his planning application. So to be consistent, I think the planning should come before the SUDs or the SABs.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Jeff, you were the first to propose to go against officer recommendation. Is there anybody willing to second Councillor Jeff's original proposal? That is a no. So I will take the next proposal, which is from Councillor Gareth Pugh, to go with officer recommendation, which has been seconded by Councillor Hugh. So that is the first motion I have before me. Am I correct, Carol? Yeah. I'm content with that if everyone else is. I'm looking for nodding heads. So I'm happy to go to the vote on the proposal that we go with officer recommendation as per the proposal of Councillor Gareth Pugh and Councillor Hugh Williams seconded.
Yeah. Just share another thought if I may, Chair. The reason for deferring to enable SAB application is completely a separate regime. So I don't think that's a legitimate planning reason to refuse. So again, if this ends up, I don't know what will happen after with the vote, but if it ends up with deferral, we need to articulate a planning reason.
But at the moment, I haven't got a, yeah, so I'm going to go on the first application. We're not going to go to that. I'm correct in saying that, aren't I, Rachel? I'm going to go with the first proposal that's had been seconded, which is to go with officer recommendation. Yeah, Carol, would you put that in the chat box, please?
Chair, there are actual hands up on the screen, members.
Okay, but we have Councillor Carina and then Councillor Calvert. I've already indicated we're going to the vote. Councillor Carina?
Just to check, Welsh Government will filter out something that doesn't have sufficient drainage, yeah?
It will automatically go.
Well, with the holding direction, what we have to do is, following, if committee was minded to approve, we would have to supply Welsh Government with the committee decision, obviously, but also the officer report and the evidence. They will review that and they will decide, as I said, whether they call it in to determine it themselves or whether they come back to us and say, Powys County Council, you may now issue a decision. So they will review the issues, the planning issues, including flooding.
So I'm just voting on the site plan you've shown me because the flooding issues will be addressed.
Councillor Carl.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that I was Councillor Elwyn Vaughan was the first to have a proposal and seconder. Councillor Gareth Pugh didn't have a seconder at the time he came to Councillor Elwyn, so it's our vote that should come first, I believe.
Councillor Carl, did I not come in before Elwyn?
You did, but you didn't have a seconder.
Oh, I see. You were once chair, I won't argue.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Councillor Elwyn, I'm going to come to you. Are you wishing for your deferment to still stand?
Well, I think that should go to the vote first. That's my gut instinct, but Hugh did come in afterwards.
Before we do that, we need a reason that, a planning reason that
right.
Planning officers will be content and satisfied to take forward if the deferral was successful.
Okay, well, what I highlighted, of course, is the genuine concerns that seem to be by members and wider, of the need to have, what was in front of us in terms of flooding and things didn't meet up to standards. And therefore, it's very difficult for us to say yay or nay to a proposal where we've had officers in the committee saying that they don't meet the requirements. Now, however you word that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll always try and help. I'm struggling. I think the conflict that other members mentioned, from a planning policy perspective, I think the development is compliant when it comes to flooding. So I know there's disagreement from within the room around that. If we were to defer, I'm just struggling with this. Would we go back to NRW?
Well, no, it's not the NRW. It's the need for having these sort out the SABs or SUDS application, because if the application in front of us, it's in the LDP, that's fine. Housing allocation, that's fine. The fundamental problem is you've got this pond design there, which is presented as being a fundamental part of the proposal, yet we've heard officers in the being telling us today that doesn't meet requirements, and there are fundamental questions about it. So I can't see how you can approve something whilst there are fundamental issues which haven't been resolved. You can't divorce one from the other, can you?
Councillor Peter, please, and then I'll ask Rachel to come in as well.
Yeah, no, I understand what Councillor Elwyn is saying, and it's that relationship between the two consenting regimes. but we can grant planning permission for something to then see a separate application is a separate process, not receive approval under that separate process. We have to determine the planning application on its planning merits in line with planning policy. So whilst I sort of sympathise with the argument, we have to separate the two and not blur the two. So I'm looking for a planning reason rather than concerns that it won't get SAB approval.
Rachel, will you be so kind as to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to echo what Peter's saying, really, you know, what is it that you're after for the deferment? So, yeah, you need to put forward your planning reasons to articulate them to take this one forward.
Well, I see Councillor Clare wants to come in. I don't know if she wants to contribute to the conversation or not.
Councillor Clare, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to sort of help members before we go to the vote on this, Councillor Elwyn did helpfully say in his opening speech about not being comfortable with refusing this because it's in the LDP and that there's a risk of going to appeal and the applicant might win, etc., etc. I think it's also important that members are aware that requiring somebody to defer an application till they get the SAB approval might also result in an appeal, because there would potentially be a non-determination of the planning application when clearly all the evidence in front of us suggests that we are in a position to make a recommendation on that. So I just want members to understand that it's not just whether we refuse something that goes to appeal, it's whether or not we've done anything that is tantamount to being unreasonable behaviour leading to unnecessary costs on behalf of the applicant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. As I see it currently, we have not got a legitimate planning reason to defer. No. That's how I see it. I'm just looking for some help here from members. I see a lot of nodding heads, and we have not got a genuine reason to go, and everyone in the chamber is nodding. So I'm looking for help and guidance. Are you happy that as we've not, I will go to the vote that has been proposed by, I forget now.
Gareth.
Proposed by Gareth and second by Hugh. Are you all happy that we're going? And Carol, I want to make sure I'm getting this right. Rachel, Peter, are you all happy with that? Yeah. No, I'm not taking any more. Carol, can you put that in the vote in the chat box, please? It's there now, 11:57. Has everyone had a chance to vote? Has anyone experienced any problems? Carol, if not, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So 16 members eligible to vote. 13 have voted with the officer's recommendation, 2 against and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carol. So application number 23/1784/FUL has been approved as per officer recommendation, with the caveat that it will be go into Welsh Government and NRW. Thank you. Thank you, members, for your patience in getting through that. Thank you, members of the public. I think a 5-minute comfort break is in order. So it's now 12 o'clock. So back here, 10 past. Thank you all. Carol Cordin. Yeah, croeso nôl pawb. Welcome back. Before we move to the next item on our agenda, Carol, can we have a roll call again, please?
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Gareth D. Jones.
Yma.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Tom Corbett isn't here. Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Claire Hall.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Ed Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Councillor Karina Kenyon-Wade. Councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Jeff Morgan. Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan.
Yma.
Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson.
Present.
Councillor Hugh Williams.
Yma.
Thank you. So that's everybody, Chair. And just to let you know, I have brought in the 2 speakers. So can we just check that we can hear them? So Nigel Dodman is an objector. Mr. Dodman?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much. And then Nia Russell is the agent for the next.
Hello. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Nia.
Thank you.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Carol. Right, moving on, item 4.3 before us this afternoon. Application 24//0210/FUL. Meteorological mast. 1260 metres east of Llandrindod Wells Powys. Take us through this again. Having another busy day is Lorraine. Lorraine, please.
Erection of a meteorological mast of a maximum height of 120 metres with ancillary structures, including 4 PV panels for a temporary period of up to 3 years. And the site is east of Llanefan, near Llandegli. This has been called in by the local member, Councillor Ed Jones, due to public interest. So the application is for the meteorological mast, rather, will be a lattice design of galvanised steel in a sort of a triangle, like a sort of a Toblerone shape of 0.48 metres per side. There'll be 4 PV ground mounted panels. It'll be 117 metres high with equipment taking it up to that 120 metres high, and it's a temporary request for temporary permission for 3 years, after which the land will be returned to its original state. So this is the location of the site within the wider area. You can see New Radnor there to the east, Llandegli to the northwest, and the Forest Inn Junction down to the south. And this is the location of the site within the more immediate locality, and you can see the byway open to all traffic up the side there, and you can see the Tonk Road, I believe it is, to the A44 down to the southwest. There has been some concern, but so I'm just showing you the access to get to the site. The route taken would actually be slightly different from that originally proposed, and would now be along the byway open to all traffic, along there, and then across to reach the mast site here. And that's shown more clearly at the base there, along that byway. This is the sort of block plan of the mast. As you can see, it's got three, that would be the mast there, that's the photovoltaic panels, and these would be the three legs of guy wires, and these would extend to leave it 65 meters out, and I believe there are 8 on each side. I would need to double check that. I thought I'd written that down. The site is within, there are 3 Section 7 habitats within 500 meters of this site, 2 of which are upland heathland and 1 is wood pasture. There we are. Oh, there's the diagram of the mast, so up to the full height, and then these guide wires would come down and anchoring it in place. So there's no concrete cement, there's no foundations, it would just be anchored into the ground and then removed completely afterwards. There would be a condition for bird deflectors to be every 2 meters down these guy wires to prevent or to assist in preventing birds flying into them. There's been a number of objections, including from the Community Council, on visual grounds, landscape grounds. Therefore, I've got this diagram showing the landscape implications from these 4 sites. Obviously, there is the mast itself. So the first one is Gunnan Bank, which is basically the hill behind Llanddewi, and there we can see where my cursor is now, how big the mast would be from that point. Another vantage point is thought to be near the Pales, which is on Pennybont Common, and again, that's what you'd be able to see from there. Llandegli Rocks, obviously, alongside the truck road near Llandegli. Again, that's the mast there within the landscape. And the 4th one would be east of Castell Creugerydd, which is partway between Llandegli and Llanfihangel Melyn. And that is where it would be, how it would be visible from there. So that's my presentation on this one, and the recommendation would be to approve.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr, thank you, Lorraine. We have 2 public speakers in relation to this application, each of which will have 5 minutes. So first, I'd like to ask Mr. Nigel Dodman if you can hear us. I can see you're on screen. So
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
You've got 5 minutes and the time starts whenever you're ready.
Okay, my name is Nigel Dodman. I live at the Warren in New Radnor, which is in the Radnor Forest, quite close to the site. But I would just like to start by saying that the last time I addressed this committee was to oppose the Hendy Wind Farm application. And on that occasion, you rejected both the case officer's recommendation and the application for all the right reasons. And I hope you'll do the same today. The whole project to build a wind farm on Radnor Forest is a direct offshoot of Hendy Wind Farm, because the developers of Hendy Wind Farm were partners in Bute at the beginning of Bute Energy, but they also introduced the landowners to Bute Energy for this scheme on the Radnor Forest. Powys was seen as a soft target, and I think that's a great insult to the county. Based on the lamentable experience with Hendy Wind Farm, Powys County Council cannot possibly oversee the implementation of planning conditions for all the proposed projects that Bute have in line in the county. Bute Energy plans to flood the zone, to use an expression used in connection with Donald Trump, making it impossible to do that job properly. And it's time for some honesty here. There's nothing remotely Welsh about these plans. Wales does not need the energy to meet their targets. It's all about making a fortune for Scottish speculators and their investors, which includes the Welsh Pension Partnership. I'm glad to say Powers had the good sense to resist investing in Bute Energy. In letters from Bute Energy...
Dodman, can I remind you this application is for a meteorological mast?
Yes, yes, this is just relevant background material.
That's your point in relation to this application.
Yeah, okay. You're being asked to consider this as a standalone application, yet both the agents, Turley, and the case officer state clearly in writing that the application is directly linked to the prospective future application for the Nant Mythil Energy Park scheme. So it's not a standalone, and you're being asked to facilitate the delivery of a scheme of which 80%, that's about 25 of the proposed 31 giant wind turbines, lie outside the Welsh Government's pre-assessed area for wind and solar. This is a deliberate land grab attempt, and the land has not been found capable of accommodating large-scale industrial infrastructure as laid down in the Future Wales document, because it's not inside pre-assessed area 4. I have asked for this application to be removed from the agenda, and have also objected to the proposal for 2 further reasons. The access route shown on the plans crosses private land for which no permission has been sought, nor the landowners consulted. That is my land and that of the Duff Gordon family, both opposed to this. That section is also a footpath, LM 1242. The landowners in this case should really be statutory consultees, and the application should be rejected on the grounds that they were not consulted. The inspector in the Hendy inquiry agreed that adjoining landowners or people whose land is included in the plans should be consulted before the application is validated. This hasn't been done. Number 2, the case officer's report states that a CEMP, a construction and environmental management plan, must be submitted, quote, prior to determination. As of yesterday, no proper CEMP has been submitted, merely some undated, obvious cut and pasted documents from Dulles with no site-specific information. Further objections I have really are to do with the fact that a cross-party committee to the Welsh Government ministers recently confirmed that Wales faces a biodiversity and species decline crisis. These proposals will add to this detriment.
Mr. Dodman, you have 1 minute left.
Yeah. So I'm in my original objection, which you'll have a copy. I highlighted a few things, including the ornithology here. I think birds on the Radnor Forest, there are several red listed species of raptors, including hen harriers, merlins, peregrines. These all fly at heights that within the scope of this proposal, and they fly with their heads down. They're not going to see guidelines or things that are fitted to the guide ropes that you've outlined in the proposal. And I just would like to reinforce my objection to this, and thank you for allowing me to present the case to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dodman. Now I'd like to invite Nia Russell, the agent. You also have 5 minutes, and time starts when you are ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in support of this temporary plan application. My name is Nia Russell. I'm an Associate Director at Turley, who are the planning agents acting on behalf of the applicant. The application, as you've heard, is for the erection of a meteorological mast for a temporary period of 3 years. The purpose of the mast is to measure wind speeds and direction to inform turbine selection process for the proposed Nant Mythil Energy Park, ensuring that a safe and efficient turbine can be selected, which is appropriate for the conditions at the site, should planning permission be granted by the Welsh ministers in due course. This is in itself a standalone planning application entirely separate to any DNS application for the energy park itself. The mast will have a maximum height of 120 metres from ground level and will be fitted with monitoring equipment. It will be supported by 3 sets of guy wires. The mast is temporary and will be decommissioned after the 3-year period and the land returned to its original condition. There will be no permanent foundations. The location of the mast has been chosen, taking into account the need for it to be as close as practical to an existing access track on a relatively flat area, avoiding statutory and non-statutory environmental designations, and to ensure impacts on any sensitive habitats and species are avoided, then minimised in line with the stepwise approach required by PPW. The applicant sought specialist advice from professional ecologists and ornithologists to confirm the most suitable location for the mast, considering the distance from protected species and the habitats which are present in the area. The Planning Officer's recommendation for approval is welcomed, and we support the conclusions that the scheme is compliant with the aims and objectives of Future Wales, PPW and the Powys Local Development Plan. The Ministry of Defence has been consulted in relation to the proposal and confirmed no objections, subject to appropriate conditions which are included in the report, including for the provision of aviation safety lighting. This is low intensity infrared lighting and is invisible to the naked eye and is not considered to have any impacts on either residential amenity or ecology. The applicant has submitted biodiversity survey reports and an assessment of the habitats on the site. No objection has been received from the Council's ecologist or NRW consultees in this respect, subject to conditions, including that bird deflectors are positioned on the outer guy wires surrounding the mast and a construction environmental management plan be submitted to ensure that impacts to habitats are minimised. The applicant commissioned a landscape architect to prepare a visual technical statement and photo montages, as you've seen, to demonstrate the potential landscape and visual impacts of the mast. The mast itself is designed to be unobtrusive through its slender form, materials and the colour. The conclusions of the landscape statement were that due to the narrow form of the mast, the influence on landscape character would be localised, limited and temporary. From most visual receptors surrounding the site, the mast will be noticeable but not dominant. To conclude, the application should be considered on its own merits, like every other planning application before you today, and without prejudice to the forthcoming DNS application for the Energy Park. We're grateful for the professional and thorough assessment provided by the Council's officers to date and consultees, and respectfully request that committee members approve the application today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Nia Russell. There we go, members. Floor is yours. Looking for the first, Councillor Carl Lewis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I always view applications with an open mind. I don't have anything in particular against the mast, but obviously what it does open up is an energy park. Again, I come with that with an open mind. It will be decided by Welsh Government. So with that in mind, Chair, there are valid concerns about the amount of energy parks coming into Powys at the moment. And I was just wondering, would it be in our gift to suggest that you write to the Cabinet Secretary, Rebecca Evans, with our concerns, legitimate concerns. Rebecca Evans is the Cabinet Secretary for Economy, Energy and Planning. Just wondering if we could do that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carl. I understand that the Chair of Council is indeed convening a meeting to discuss this and the cumulative effect of everything. So I think that may be addressed like that. But I think at the moment we're looking at this application, Peter.
Yeah, we've got to focus on this application.
Maybe we can focus on this application, Councillor Carl, and happy if you want to raise that afterwards. And if that's something that the committee is minded to do, we'll go with the consensus.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be probably dropping out halfway through this application. So it's just something for the committee to discuss, as you say, when you come to the determination on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Councillor Gareth, then Councillor Ed, please.
Yeah, just one very quick question to the officers. I know this area quite well, but I don't know whether it's the land common land or is it in just normal agricultural land?
I need to check. I need a moment to check.
If you could leave that with us.
Yeah, just following up from that, obviously we had the previous application at last meeting and the same company hadn't, well, sorry, they're running as separate companies, but the same group hadn't, had applied for access, common access, whatever the right terminology, they've only done it a month before the meeting. So I think we just need to clarify that.
obviously we'll get onto that now just to double check. Thank you, councillor Ed.
It's just picking up on a few things that Mr. Dodman spoke on is the Kemp report. Have we got the up-to-date one now, an adequate one? And also, you mentioned that access is going through his land. On the map that you've shown in front of us on the thing here now, it says that you've got access. Is that correct? Is there actual vehicle access to this hill without crossing someone's ground without permission?
Lorraine, please.
Okay, with regard to the camp, it's actually a prior to commencement condition that one would be submitted. So there would have to be an acceptable one submitted and agreed before they could do anything else. So that's a condition already. And with regard to the access, my understanding would be that because this is a byway open to all traffic, where I've shown my cursor here, they could get to this point here on a public highway, albeit pretty rough, I would imagine. I don't know how they would get across there, that part to the site, but that wouldn't be our business. They would have to agree that with the landowner.
On that note, what sort of vehicle are they looking to take up there? Because I do know this ground quite well. It is very narrow. You wouldn't get a lorry up there easy. Is there anything we can say on that to limit the vehicle as such? Or?
Actually, Highways did come back with them, and they said they had no concerns because their expectation would be that it would be sort of, I presume, off-road trucks, and it wouldn't necessarily need lorries to be getting up there. They wouldn't get up there. I've been on that track before, so but you could get an off-road vehicle to that point, certainly. I don't know the part that's on potentially private ground or off the route, but again, that would be for them to resolve.
Councillor Ed,
Thank you. I know it's very narrow, and I know there's a lot of feeling over this. As the ward member, I've had a lot of people come to me and question all this. I have no interest, no personal prejudicial, so I was just trying to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor Ed.
Check the common land situation. It's not cited on common land.
Thank you both. Councillor Jolliffe and then councillor Elwyn, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just make a comment in response to Councillor Carl's comments about the cumulative effect? Would that be okay?
Can we stick to the application, councillor Jonathan, and maybe discuss that later?
Okay, no problem.
If you have anything in relation to this application, that'd be great.
No, it's a more general point in response to Carl. I was anxious to do that before he left. That's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Elwyn.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Yes, well, very similar to previous applications, of course. Naturally, there are legitimate concerns by some people in the community and in the area. However, we have a comprehensive report of the officer, and we also have clear guidelines in what is expected, and it is a temporary measure with no fixed basis like concrete, etc. So on that basis, I move that we accept the officer's recommendation. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch, Elwyn. Councillor Angela, please.
Just a thought with regards to the byway open to all traffic. Obviously, the clue's in the title, isn't it? It's open to all traffic and anybody can drive along there. But the local authority is responsible ultimately for the maintenance of byways and footpaths. And I just wonder if our rights of way officer has commented. I can't remember reading anything from her. There was something from her in there. Because if there's going to be increased usage along here, there's going to be an increased cost to the council, isn't there, in maintaining it or reinstating it?
I feel I read something in here.
They have commented. I mean, if it's helpful, I sort of have private knowledge of the track, and it's a rough stone track. And from what I've read about the application, the amount of traffic needing to put the mast up would be relatively, just a short burst and relatively small amounts. And then after that, there would just be half a dozen visits per year for maintenance and checking. So I can have a look for the
I note that they did object to use of the bridleway. That's the other bit of path, was it?
I
where
think
it's
the
split?
original plan, and again, this wasn't my case, so perhaps the background I'm a little bit hazy on. The original plan was to access it from, if you can see my cursor in the top.
Okay,
Right,
so
and then
nothing to
come
do
down,
with this
and I
track at
think,
all.
Countryside Services were concerned, A, that didn't have vehicular access for the public, but also they felt that that route was not as sustainable in terms of the surface as this one, the byway.
There are informatives.
And there are informatives as well, that if anybody, and separate legislation, if you were to damage, if anyone were to damage
You
a
can claim back.
right of way,
Yeah,
they would
okay.
be responsible for that.
Happy, councillor Angela, for that? Thank you. Councillor Adrian, please.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Elwyn's comments, and I'm ready to second his proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Adrian. And I believe the last hand was councillor Clare.
Sorry, Chair, I was going to second, but Councillor Adrian's beat me to it.
Thank you very much. Before going to the vote, just go double check. Nobody else wishes to comment. I'm not missing any hands. No. If not, it's been proposed by councillor Elwyn and seconded by councillor Adrian that we go with officer recommendation. Harold, you be so kind as to put it in the chat box, please. There we go. There, 4.3, 1241. Has everybody been able to vote? I haven't been able to know. Everyone at home happy? I'll close the vote then. I'm with officer recommendation, voting for, please.
So Chair, 16 members eligible to vote. 11 have voted for the recommendation from the officer, 2 against and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. So application 4.3 24/0210/FUL mast has been approved as per officer recommendation. Thank you all. Right, we have one further application before us. That relates to a development in Llandrindod Wells. Before I go any further, as this is an application by officer within Powys, I'll ask Rachel to confirm that due process has been followed.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members, given the reason for committee determination today, in line with the protocol, to confirm, I have reviewed the file and it has been processed as normal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Members, taking us through this is Luke. Oh, Councillor Carl, my apologies.
It's okay, Chair. I just want to say thank you very much for today. Thank you to everyone. I'm leaving now, so thanks a lot. Bye now.
Thank you, Councillor Carl. And what you brought up, as Councillor Wilkinson wanted to, happy to discuss sometime later, whether it's today or at the next meeting. So thank you. Luke, all yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So this application is at number 1 King's Head in Dolly for a demolition of a single-storey outbuilding and erection of a 2-storey side extension. As previously mentioned, the applicant is an employee of Powys County Council, so that's why it's in front of you today. First of all, just in terms of the site itself, it's within the Llanfiangel Rhydaithan community, approximately 600 metres to the west of the site, as shown on the map there, is Dolly train station, and also then further properties to the west, and then to the north west of the site there are a number of poultry units. As you can see on this plan, again the site location there is shown with a red cross. Shows there the C1059 County Highway, and also the right of way there with the green outline. The site is surrounded by agricultural land to the north and the west, with the King's Head cottages in a row to the east. Again, here this shows a site plan. Again, there with the right of way, the highway, and then in red there shows the proposed extension. This plan is the front elevation. As you can see there, the extension is to be finished with a slate roof, render, and matching walls. Matching windows, sorry. Here is the proposed rear elevation. Also then on these plans show the biodiversity enhancements and external lighting. The parapsychologist has confirmed no objections. Here we are, the proposed side elevation. And then this is a photo then of the property. So that shows the existing outbuilding to be demolished. The application was accompanied by an ecological survey, and that confirmed no protected species within the property itself. That is the rear of the dwelling. So obviously the existing dwelling is finished with a slate roof and timber cladding. So this photo just shows the street scene there in King's Head. So this property is number 1 of 8 cottages. The proposed render is considered to be acceptable given that a number of these cottages are finished in render as well. The slate roof is in keeping, and obviously the windows will match as previously said. This is another photo. That lane there leads back towards Dolly, and the proposed extension there, it won't have any effects on the adjoining highway. We've had no objections from the Highway Authority either. And just going back to the right-of-way, the built development won't affect the right-of-way. We have had some comments from the rights-of-way team who don't object to the development, but have requested an informative to be included to ensure that the right-of-way isn't affected at any time during construction works. As the proposed extension is on the west side of the dwelling, I don't consider there'll be any concerns in terms of loss of light or loss of privacy to any of these adjoining neighbours. My recommendation, members, is one of consent, subject to a couple of conditions. Chair, there are no speakers, so back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke. Yeah, as Luke just indicated, we have no public speakers, so members, it's over to you. First to indicate Councillor Elwyn, followed by Councillor Ed, please.
Yeah, diolch Cadeirydd, thank you. Comprehensive report there. It's a formality, obviously, coming to committee. I have no hesitation in recommending approval of the officer's report. Although I would say the place is not called Dolly. That's a child's toy. Its pronunciation is Dolai. Diolch fawr.
Apologies, Elwyn, yeah, sorry.
Luke,
it's just a Radnisher slang. Yeah, sorry.
Try again. Thank you. Councillor Ed, please.
To second the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Ed. Anyone else wishing to speak? No. In that case, Carol, again, would you take us to the vote, please? There you go. It's in the chat box now. Well, 49. We look, has everyone had an opportunity to vote? Yeah. In which case I close the vote. Carol, I haven't been able to, so again, I'm as officer recommendation 4, please. Anybody else not been able to vote? You've all come up. Good, thank you.
So Chair, 15 eligible to vote, excuse me, 15 voted with the officer's recommendation, no one against and no abstentions.
Good, thank you. So just to confirm, application 24/1659/HH has been passed as per officer recommendation. Thank you very much, Luke. Item 5, moving on, decisions to receive the delegated list. Can I propose from the seconder that we receive that? All Councillor Ed and Councillor Edwin. Everyone happy? No questions? Just looking online. No hands up. No. Where are we next, Carol? Do we have to receive declarations? Is that a misprint or? It is with it, right, to receive any declarations of interest from members relating to the following items on the agenda. Animal establishment licensing fee reviews. Anyone? No. In that case, we now have a report to consider on pages 157 to 166. And I'm looking, is Gavin with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Thanks, Chair.
Lovely. Here we go. Gavin, the floor is yours and look forward to receiving your report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll share my screen to make it a bit easier for you all, hopefully. Is my screen sharing okay?
Not yet.
Not yet. A bit slow internet, just bear with me.
There we go.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, the chair, ladies and gentlemen. All I'm bringing before you today is just the annual review of the animal establishments licensing fees. So I'm going to ask the committee to consider the fees that I'm proposing today for the next financial year, 25-26. In point 1.2, I've included a table on what the costs were last year and the numbers of licensees that we had compared to what the costs are proposed for this coming financial year and the applications licensees that we have at the time of writing this report. And as you can see from it, it would increase our income by £491. Dog breeders, we lose £300 on, that's just natural wastage where one has actually ceased trading. So moving on through the report. So the background, the fees have to be considered in line with the Local Government Association guidance, which details how we as a local authority should set those fees. The fees that I'm proposing, I've set in Appendix 1, which we'll come to later on. When we look at the fees, we have to ensure that we recover our costs. There's no detriment to the licensee. We have to include the cost of the processing of the individual license, i.e. the actual officer time from the application stage through to the subsequent issue or renewal. We have to separate the licensing processes into 3 categories, which is why you see a grant aspect for some. So on an initial application, they pay first off an application fee, which covers the cost of the initial inspections by the officers. If that license is then refused, they pay no further. If it is granted, then they pay the additional granting fee, which would cover the costs of the inspections that follow on through the course of the year. We also have to include costs of administrating the scheme, including the training of our staff, the equipment they use, etc. Any veterinary fees that are associated with any particular license, those are always invoiced separately to the invoice to the licensee, and they're recovered in full. I've included at Appendix 2 fees that are currently being charged by other authorities that were correct as of November when I researched them. As in previous years, Powys falls somewhere in the middle. We're not the highest, and we're by no means the lowest. we have consulted with the licensees concerning these proposals, and that was done on the 12th of December by either letter or post. And to date, no responses have been received. And I've included Appendix 3, a copy of the consultation letter that was sent out, along with the supporting documents, which shows how we actually arrive at the fees. So the license fees that I'm going to ask you to consider today are the animal welfare, breeding of dogs, Wales regulations ones, the animal boarding establishments, which is commercial kennels basically and catteries, riding establishments, the animal welfare license of animal activities involving animals. Effectively, that's pet sales, what was covered by the Pet Shop Act of old, dangerous wild animals, and finally the Zoo Licensing Act. So the advice is that we have to review them periodically, which is 12 months, every 12 months. They have to be on a full cost-based recovery, as I've said. Resource implications are that we should increase our income for licensing by £491 as it's projected based on the numbers at the moment, although numbers do vary through the course of the year as new licensees come on board and some actually leave. The license fees are non-business and outside the scope of VAT. I've consulted with the head of finance, who's accepted that the fees have been reviewed in line with the guidance and that it ensures the recovery of our costs, and that the relatively small increase in income can be managed by this service with their existing budget. So they are supporting the proposal. Legal have also supported it, as has the data protection officer. There's no impact assessment required for it. So in short, my recommendation to yourselves is that you consider and hopefully approve these fees as detailed in Appendix 1. Namely, as they apply here. So as I explained earlier, we've got the initial application. So it's split down to the application cost, the grant fee, if it's subsequently granted, and then that arrives at the total cost. The initial fee is always higher than a renewal because there's an additional inspection process. And then as they go through, then through the renewal process with the appropriate fees. Included also is the advisory visits, if they're requested. Those have increased in line with inflationary costs, duplication license fee, and performing animals registration, which again is based on officers' costs. And just so you have sight for comparison, Powys, these are our figures here for the various licenses. Those indicated in yellow are the lowest cost, and those indicated in red are the highest. So as I said before, we fall somewhere in the middle, and we're satisfied that our fees are accurate and fair. So on that basis, I would ask you to consider my proposals accordingly. Many thanks for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Gavin, for that very thorough report. Two hands, Councillor Ed, and then Councillor Gareth, please.
It's pretty run of the mill. I propose to accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Ed. Councillor Gareth.
And I'll second Ed's proposal.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? If not, we've had a proposal. And Councillor Hughes, sorry.
Yeah, Gavin, there are establishments which down my end who have chimpanzees and perhaps animals on site. I don't know whether I should mention them, and even in with bird gardens. Where are those included in the list? Then I would have they were under the zoo, but
yeah, they come under the zoos. So you've got the ape sanctuary you're referring to, and I assume you referred to Pennaky Inn.
No,
yeah, so they're both licensed zoos with ourselves.
So they're included in it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Hugh. Anybody else wishing to speak? If not, it's been proposed and seconded that the proposed licence fee set out in Appendix 1, the report that we have been approved and implemented with effect from the 1st of April 2025. So are we happy to have a show of hands on this? Everybody at home would, are you all? Oh, it's quicker to do like that. Right, yeah. Everyone happy with show of hands? I think that's unanimous. Yeah. Happy help? Good. Thank you very much, and thank you, Gavin, for your time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Right, rights of way, declarations of interest. Receive any declarations of interest from members relating to the following item on the agenda, i.e. the Powys Local Access Forum.
Chair, just to note that I am the county council represented on the local access forum.
Thank you, Gavin.
And unfortunately, I'm going to have to disappear in about 20 minutes as I've got another meeting at 2.
No worries, thank you. No one else? In which case, welcome to Graham Taylor, Chair, and also to Gail Jones, who I believe is the Vice Chair. So I believe we've all got a copy of the report starting on page 167. So, Mr. Taylor, Jones, whenever you're ready, please take us through.
Thank you. So thank you for inviting Gail and I to make this annual presentation on the work of the Local Access Forum. And just by way of a sort of a quick reminder, and this is mentioned in the annual report, all local authorities in Wales have to establish a local access forum to offer advice on improving access to the countryside. Officers have kindly circulated the annual report in advance of the meeting, and therefore there's no need for me to go through it in great detail or give you a death by PowerPoint presentation. What I want to do is just highlight 3 or 4 key things in the report, invite suggestions, comments on the report, and then after that just make a few other observations on rights of way issues in Powys. So that being said, then in terms of the highlights, the first thing I wanted to mention was that the forum has advised National Resources Wales that it is not in support of the proposal to create a new national park, which includes some northern parts of Powys. And the forum responded to that twice in terms of 2 consultations there are on that matter. As I understand it, the council's of a similar view, but I'm sure someone will shout at me if that's not the case. The second thing I need to mention is that the forum has been pressing the council to address the parlous state of rights of way in Powys. The report refers to the ever increasing number of outstanding reports of problems with rights of way. And the figures are fairly bald. They show that there's currently 10,000 outstanding issues to be dealt with on the rights of way. And of course, that'll be an underscore as well, because lots of things aren't reported. I go out walking a lot with myself, with my wife, with friends and with groups, and most people have stopped doing it anymore because they felt there's little point in doing it. And in terms of numbers, in the last full year for which details are available, which is the fiscal year 23-24, 1,538 new problems are reported during that year. And during the year, 257 were addressed. Now, some of those would relate to previous years, of course. This is in stark contrast to the national park, where it's very different. In the same year, they had 1,500 or so new problems. Sorry, they had 407 new problems, and they dealt with 497 of them. So clearly they dealt with something the previous year as well. So what we have here in Powys is essentially a 2-tier system. If you live in a national park, you'll find that the rights of way are, generally speaking, in pretty good condition, and they're well signposted and waymarked. If you live outside the national park, the opposite applies. The situation elsewhere is extremely poor. Now, I've heard it said quite a few times, well, that's okay, because the national park have got loads of resources to do with these sort of things. Well, if you speak to people in the national park, they won't tell you that. That's clearly not the case. They are facing the same financial constraints that other public agencies face. So what the national parks are able to do, and this relates to the next point I'm going to make, is that they make really good use of the people who volunteer to go and help and do repairs and maintain rights of way. So that's what they do very well. And I think that's the other thing that the forum's been trying to encourage the council to do, is make better use of the 200 or so volunteers who put their hands up and said, we'll help out, we'll come and do some clearance, we'll come and change a stile to a gate or we'll repair a gate. And the regular feedback we get at the forum is that those volunteers don't feel they're being exploited enough in the nicest possible way. They could do more if there was the infrastructure that enabled to do that. The forum's also been pressing the council to persuade landowners to discharge their responsibilities for rights of way which go over their land. And that's primarily maintaining gates and stiles and making sure that overhanging vegetation is cut back and doesn't obstruct the right of way. In a similar way, the forum has been suggesting to the council that we need to encourage residents and visitors to act responsibly in the countryside. The forum is very conscious that most residents and visitors do act appropriately, but there's a minority who don't, and attention needs to be paid to that. And the last sort of highlight from the report is we've been pressing the council to deal with some long outstanding problems which have been going on for literally generations. The Monk's Trod continues to be an issue. The Glaisbury Canoe launch area is a big issue, and the Marlborough City Byway is a big issue. And they are taking years and years and years to resolve, which is a real problem. But before I ask for any question of what I said or anything else in the report, I should say it's really, really important to express the thanks which the forum wants to give to the officers of the Countryside Services team, which is a very small team of officers who are clearly extremely dedicated, work very hard, and provide lots of professional expertise and knowledge in dealing with the rights of way. The problem is they got one hand tied behind their back and both their feet tied together in actually doing that work. The resources they have available are very limited. So it is important to stress that the officers that the council's got working on Countryside Services are doing a really very good job with the limited resources that are available. But perhaps, Chair, I could just stop for a second there and just ask for questions on anything I've said or anything else, and I'll go on to other thoughts after that, if that's okay.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Also need to welcome Sian as well here, professional lead of Countryside Access and Recreation. So welcome. Apologies, we started just before you arrived. But if you want to say anything, please feel free. Or if anybody members want to address questions. Anybody wishing to speak? Councillor Gareth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just second what Graham's just said about the quality of the staff we've got in this team? Don't want to embarrass Sian, but she's one of the best officers I think I deal with as a county councillor. Her knowledge around the area of her service is second to none. And we've seen that within this committee. But I'd also like to thank Graham and Gail as well, because they do a stunning job being chair and vice chair of the local access for and keep us in the right direction. I think Graham's made a really good point about the quality of investment by the council in the highways and byways, and you know, we're all aware of the current financial situation in social services, especially adult social services, and I think enhancing this service could be a way of actually increasing the well-being of those people who are affected and could actually help to reduce costs in other service areas. And it's a pity that we don't, as a council, have that wider imagination when looking at budget proposals. It's a pity. I think that I don't know what the percentage is, but most of the budget for improvements in this area, I believe, is come from grants. it's not a good way of actually ongoing. Second to that, we've also got the possible ability to access some funding if the energy parks do go forward in the next 5 years, where there's going to be significant community funds. I know I will be pushing that, we need to make the footpaths and vital ways a key area of that community fund if they come ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Gareth.
Doesn't require a response, I don't think.
No. Anyone else wishing to make comments? Councillor Edwin, please.
Diolch yn Eirydd. The question really, are you any tied up with accessibility powers?
Not tied up with accessibility powers, no, but the forum is very interested in making sure that people who traditionally aren't able to use rights of way are enabled to do so, and hence efforts to try and make sure that wherever possible, stiles are replaced by gates which people in wheelchairs or other mobility devices can get through. Also trying to make sure that the facilities are available for people with visual impairments can get through as well. So yeah, it is very much an important thing. It's one of the groups of people who do need to get access to the countryside.
Thank you, because that's where I'm coming from actually. I sit with the disabled access in Brecon, and sadly their numbers have been going down. I did ask the question, was it because they were no longer with us, but that isn't the case. And it's difficult to get the support. And they're seriously thinking at this moment in time, I know, to join forces with disability powers. But because it's a charity, apparently there doesn't seem to be an issue. But what concerns me is that the chair of, what's it, accessibility powers, isn't it?
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, lives in Scotland. So what point is that? I don't know. And I was told the other day, well, there's hardly ever any meetings with them whatsoever. And I think somebody needs to look at that side of it, because, there are a lot of disabled people within the county who are experiencing these issues. And as I sit in the park as well, we are very fortunate. We've got fantastic wardens, and they do address that. And in the majority of cases, the rights of way are pretty well signposted and serviced.
I think that's right, and there's certainly more to be done for people with accessibility issues. Yeah, and Sean, I'm sure will confirm that.
Yeah, good.
Diolch, Councillor Edwin. Councillor Jonathan and then Councillor Hugh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to echo Gareth's comments and thank Sian and her team for all the work they do with an ever-shrinking budget in Powys to try and maintain our rights of way. It must be increasingly difficult and demoralising task, I would think. And Graham, for the work you do. It's a question really about the establishment of a new national park up in the north, up in Montgomeryshire, parts of Montgomeryshire and Clwyd, the Clwydian Ranges, which you'll know about. Could we expect, if this national park was to go ahead, that there'd be an injection of cash through that to improve the footpaths, byways in my part of Montgomeryshire, some of them which are in a dreadful state?
It's difficult for me to speak on behalf of Welsh Government for this sort of thing, but I think the likelihood of a huge injection of funding is extremely unlikely. Any new national park will not be getting lots more than any existing national park. So yeah, extra funds is unlikely to be an outcome, I would have thought.
Okay, thank you. Disappointing, but thank you.
Happy, Councillor Wilkinson? Yeah.
Yeah, not happy with the conclusion, but yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hugh, please do.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I echo your views on the rights of way team and what have you? They're busy, knowledgeable, and extremely capable. My question is that there are vital routes which could be argued to be disabled or less abled views. Is there a responsibility? How does the sponsored sort of cycle tracks, do we consider them in our thoughts when we discuss footpaths and what have you?
Perhaps you can answer that one, Sian.
We do work closely with the active travel team. So there are a number of cycle routes that do make use of public rights of way, and we do work closely around those opportunities. Active travel funding has quite strict geographical limitations at the moment. Whether that will change in future, we're not sure. So that very much sits with Vincent Goodwin and his team, and we do work closely with them. We do also sit under the same senior manager, which is really very helpful. In terms of access routes, though, we are also working with our Sport Powys colleagues, looking at making information on routes available on a website that they've had developed. So that will be coming fairly soon. And whilst we're not we're not stating that these are all easy access routes, what we will be doing is providing information to allow the user to make their own decisions so that they can decide, is it style free, for example, what are the gradients, that kind of thing, because we're encouraged to look at to describe the route so that the user can make their own decision. There is a lot of work going on around that. There isn't a specific organisation necessarily that oversees accessibility on public rights of way. That's something that's beholden on us as the county council to look at.
Sharon, you happy? Yeah, good. And please take on board all of our appreciation for all the work you do. I think it states how I regard your help. It's all about the comments. So thank you very much to you and your small team for all the work you do. And thank you also to Stella and Gail here for your hard work as well. So good. Thank you all.
Can I mention now the things I wanted to say?
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
And I've been to this committee, I think, twice before, and you probably got, well, you did. You got a similar sort of message about the state of the rights of way, and I don't want to just sound like a broken record in terms of belly aching about it. So what I thought I'd best do is actually just give a few thoughts and suggestions about how the council might improve the situation it finds itself in at the moment. I think the first thing, and a really strategic thing, is as the council develops its new local development plan, it makes better provision in there for protecting and enhancing access to the countryside, because obviously the LDP is a key document which governs all sorts of things in the council. The forum's already submitted some detailed comments on the draft sort of paperwork that's come up thus far. So I'd make a plea, please, that as the plan goes through its various stages of development, that there is discussion with the forum on an early and timely basis, so we can put our two penny within to try and make sure that the new plan does protect rights of way. Second thing is that the council has recently got involved with the Marches Forward Partnership, which I know is trying to attract funding into the area across all the four council areas, and in particular to improve sort of green tourism in Powys and elsewhere. And we've had some limited consultation on that at the moment. So I think, again, we want to make sure that the Forward Partnership does involve the forum at an early stage in discussions about any practical solutions to dealing with our rights of way and general tourism officer in Powys. Third thing, the council's developing its sustainable Powys programme with, is it 5K areas and 13 localities? Is that the latest number? Was it changed from that? I don't know, but a small number of hub areas and localities. And I think it's important as that's developed to think about how the new configuration can work for rights of way, because not only maintaining them, but also discharging the council's statutory responsibility to assert and protect rights of way in Powys. So we need to consider how best that can be done through this new setup. Likewise, the council is also engaged, isn't it, in trying to make sure that public transport fits with those new sustainable Powys. And can I make a plea, please, that when you're doing that, you do take account of the fact that we want to make it easier for residents to be able to get to popular rights of way without jumping in their car. And if they can go on public transport, all the better. So in terms of reconfiguration, that would be really good. Clearly, resources are always tight. and you can't do everything at the same time. But I think it's important to pick up a couple of points we made earlier, that we do focus on those residents who have the least access to rights of way and get to the countryside. And that would include people who are in the highest levels of deprivation. It will include people who've got mobility issues, and it will include people who've got various different illnesses. So I think in terms of when allocating resources on priorities, we should be looking very closely at those groups of people. I think the council should also be looking now at reviewing its rights of way improvement plan, which was approved in 2018 and runs to 2028. And as part of that review, I think it's really important that the council undertakes an independent survey of the condition of its rights of way. It did that before the last rights of way improvement plan and the one before that. It used to be an annual requirement on all local authorities in Wales to do an independent survey each year to see what the state of their rights of way were. And I think it would be good if the council could do that so that it's got a better sort of position about where the problems are geographically, as well as the type of problems. And I think this is really important for the council to be ambitious. I think they should commit to a 5-year programme to making sure that 50% of the rights of way are open and easy to use. That's half of them. To give you some context, in 2007, when the first rights of way improvement plan was approved, the survey undertaken then said 46% of the rights of way were open and easy to use. And in 2008, when the first programme was put together, the target was to get to 80% within 10 years. So moving from 40 odd to 80%. When the survey was done in 2018, rather than going up from 45 to 80%, it had gone down to 36%. So the 10 years effort had resulted in an actual reduction in the number of rights of way. That's a considerable fall. And if one looks at the comparative data that's completed over the years, and it stopped around 2015, Powys was always in the bottom 2 or 3 of local authorities across Wales for the percentage of footpaths which are open and easy to use. So we've always been right towards the bottom of the league table. So one needs to be realistic. We're not to get to the position where we're going to get to 80%, but moving from 35, 36 up to 50% will be a significant way forward, and something which I think we should owe to our local residents. So I think I'd ask for that to be considered as a target, 50% within 5 years. And as part of that programme, I think it's also important to make sure that people know where the footpaths are. Again, it's a statutory responsibility of the local authority to put up a signpost where a footpath joins a road. And at the moment, that doesn't happen in many, many cases. And much of the feedback which I get with a different hat on as a member of the Ramblers is that we don't come to Powys because we can't find our way. One, because the signposts aren't there. And secondly, we can't find the footpaths anyhow. So the signpost is a really important thing. And I think that's, again, something which we need to try and make sure we allocate resources to do. A couple of other things. I think we need to continue to lobby against the establishment of a national park, which you picked up on earlier. So that will remain the forum's position, I'm sure. And picking up a point Gareth made, he obviously saw my notes. I think it's important that we have some early discussions with the renewable energy providers. Again, with my other hat on as a Ramblers, I've had some discussions with them already, because we want to see how some of the significant amount of the funding which may be coming this way is used to fund improvements in those areas which are affected by the renewal parks. I think we should also be, as a local authority, pressing Welsh Government to do 2 things with the proposed sustainable farming scheme, which is still not quite there yet, but it's still going through the final stages of consultations. And one is to press for cross-compliance to be included. Cross-compliance being that when an annual assessment is made about the subsidy level for each farm, an assessment should be made about the extent to which they're discharging their responsibilities for their gates and their stiles and their overhanging vegetation. If they're not discharging those responsibilities, there should be some sort of financial penalty to that. That happens in England. So I think the local authority should be pushing Welsh Government to adopt that. The second thing is, it's also the case that the existing draft scheme proposes that landowners and farmers should be paid for any improvements they do. And I think that's right. So again, I think local authority should be lobbying for that to definitely be a part of the new scheme. In terms of practical stuff the council can do now, I think the council is the holder of a lot of land and a lot of property. And I think there needs to be an audit of the council's own land to make sure that we are discharging our responsibilities as a landowner, to make sure any stiles that go across are in tenanted farms, for example, are actually there and in good order. So I think it's important we put our own house in order before we're asking other people to do so. I think we also need to proactively within the local authority encourage responsible use of rights of way. I touched on that earlier, but in particular, clearly there's an issue of dogs which comes up from time to time. In fact, that comes up quite a lot. And Countryside Code was recently changed last year, which said that people need to keep their dogs under control, falling short of actually saying they need to be on a lead. And I think there's a debate to have about that. But I think it's important that the council does give out publicity so that both residents and visitors know the damage which dogs can cause in a whole variety of different settings. In addition to that, of course, none of us likes the bags of dog poo which are left as well, which again, I think is an issue which there's some education to do about. And of course, we also need to make sure that people keep to the rights of way. It's all very tempting sometimes to take a shortcut. And of course, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be keeping on the rights of way and not ending up in someone's back garden. So again, I think there's more publicity to do at that. As we speak today, I think there's a dire need for the council in the next couple of weeks to be making noises about the dangers of dogs in lambing season, because that's happening and it's a timely thing to do, I think. If the tourism tax does come on board, I think the council needs to be very careful at looking at how that money is used. And it would be clear, wouldn't it? It would be a possible source of funding for works on rights of way, because visitors do come here and use the rights of way. So I think that would be a good thing to do that. Almost finished now. The improvement of the countryside is really important, but it's not just about money. It's about an overall approach. And I've quoted in the report that quote alleged from Einstein, that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If the council continues to do it as it is at the moment, when I come back here 1 year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, it's going to be the same refrain. So there is change required. And in the past, the local authority, when they found a bit of their service which isn't working properly, they allocate transformation funds to it. I think particularly I'm involved in education to a certain degree. A few years back, we pulled in consultants and extra people to look at additional learning needs problems. So I think there's an opportunity with the council to use some of its transformation funding to actually have a real good look at rights of way. And without getting too melodramatic about it, I think the council should actually apologise to the younger generation that it's let the rights of way get such a bad position. That's not you guys sitting around this table. That's generations of councillors have let local residents down, let the future generation down.
So can I ask you to wrap it up again?
Yeah, having done that,
meetings to go to.
Yeah, having done that apology, then I think the local authority should commit to actually doing something about it rather than just leave it, because that's the most important thing to do, to give an undertaking that they will get within 5 years half the rights of way up and open, easy to use. And the final point, okay, is those of you who have been involved in the leisure survey review Well, I'm sure I've noted that the top mark for what people do to keep fit and keep exercising was walking. 61% of people said that. In addition to that, in response to the question about where you do your exercise, highest proportion was going out for a walk or a bike ride. We need to make sure, or the council needs to make sure, that there's facilities there for people to do that. Happy to take any further questions.
Thank you very much. Angela, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I turned my wrong light on earlier. Sorry. So yeah, I wanted to mirror the thanks to Graham. I know Graham lives in my ward, and I know he's very dedicated to this role and others that he does as a volunteer. And I think we need to remember that members of the Local Access Forum are all volunteers, and they give their time willingly and passionately. And just to sort of highlight some of the things he said there and sort of back him up on that, I'm a keen off-road runner, and I feel your pain with regards to access, literally from the nettle stings and bramble scratches when you're going. And I do think there's more we can do. There has been a scheme in the past where farmers were paid for putting in footpaths. We put one on our own farm. Actually, we closed it down again because actually it caused more trouble with gates left open. So we do need that two-way communication. Absolutely support you on that. And the dogs now, as all of us, as a vast majority of the population, have more leisure time and more money to spend on that leisure than ever before. So there are increased numbers of dogs, and they're not always under control. Personal people's definition of dog under control: when you're running and a dog chases you, it's not fine for the owner to say, he's all right, he's only being friendly. No, thank you very much. So, you know, it does work both ways. And dog poo bags here, let's not start on that. But what I wanted just to explore quickly is the boat, a byway open to all traffic. And we've had one in that application we've just had now, haven't we? And the Monks Trod in Reda is an ancient footpath on which monks travelled from abbey to abbey. And yet it's now a boat. Literally any vehicle could go on it. But they weren't built for that, were they? And I do wonder, should there be something we're doing as a council, exploring that and seeing what appropriate path in the appropriate place? Because we are financially really responsible for maintaining them. But how do you maintain a grassy track on which a 4x4 and motorbike is actually legally allowed to travel?
Angie, you're not just referring to Monks Trod, you're referring generally to boats.
Yeah, all boats. Yes, all boats.
Yeah.
Not just that. That's in my ward, but there was one earlier, wasn't there, in a planning application, and they're all over the country.
I mean,
Sian, do you
Sian's probably the best to answer that.
Do you want to come back in there? I got councillors looking at me, they've got other meetings, and I know they're hungry, but obviously this is wants a lot of our time.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think in terms of the general points that Graham is raising, as a team, we are working very closely with our economy and climate service to work on environmental investment, looking at investment for the future, recognising the extreme pressure on council finances and on central government finances. So we are looking at alternative and creative sources of funding to try and improve our rights of way network and countryside access generally. In terms of the byways open to all traffic, we appreciate that it is a contentious area. I mean, ultimately, these are highways. They are open to all users, including those in motor vehicles. And what we do need to be mindful of in the way that we manage them is that as a highway authority, we do have a statutory duty to assert and to protect the enjoyment of all lawful users, as opposed to unlawful activity, which is a concern. So I can't offer a single answer where those are concerned. It is a complex, contentious area, and we manage each byway working with user groups, looking at the individual issues and potential resolutions to them, as we do elsewhere. Again, I'd like to mirror my thanks to the Local Access Forum as volunteers in giving their time and their support. Hugely beneficial to the service to have that information. But yes, plenty of challenges moving forward, but we're working on a very different agenda now, looking at environmental investment, also working very closely with other services like social services around health and well-being, which is a very good place to be, I think. Does that help, Chair?
Definitely, thank you. Thank you very much. Everyone else got anything to add? Councillor Edwin, Govlin. Microphone. Microphone, Councillor Edwin, please.
We're in a position where we have several rights of way, and one place which is close to Brecon. And I do a lot of work with the National Park and the team there, which are fantastic, to be fair, and I've been very involved in them. But what we are finding, and I'll tell you straight, arrogance of so many walkers. It is quite disturbing. You know, we have within a 2-mile place from my home, there are places I know which are in excess of 100 beds. And bad experience. And it's just down to arrogance.
I think I mentioned in my report.
Which is upsetting.
I mentioned in my report that most of the people who walk, cycle, ride, or whatever are fine, but there will always be a minority.
Always bad pennies. I quite agree with that.
Always, yeah. And again, that's why it's necessary for the council to keep hammering the message about what responsible use of rights of way is, whether you're riding a horse, or walking, or cycling, or driving a 4x4.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you really very much for your time and your detailed analysis of everything. Members, we'll draw the meeting to a close. Are you all happy that we put onto the next agenda what Councillor Carl and Jonathan raised in relation to the cumulative effect? So we'll just discuss that in closed session afterwards. I believe the next meeting is on the 13th of March, Carol? I think it is. I just looked it up, so I believe that is. So Timon, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you to all the officers presented today. Thank you for all the team, members of the public who contributed, and thank you to all planning committee members home and in the chamber for your time and attention today. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Close the meeting at 2:25. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.